Chapter 23. The next day Yu Qianqiu, who had a bountiful harvest, found Shi Xiaotian with 2 roasted hares. He saw that Shi Xiaotian was grinning from ear to ear, and was happily digging. The 2 baskets were filled to the brim, and there was a big pile on the ground. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He looked at where he dug and asked, "I think we've only dug 1/3 of the place? There's already so much." Shi Xiaotian smiled and said, "Uncle Master found a great place. We've dug enough to hand in 7 or 8 times. It's just that it's not easy to transport so many spirit stones." Yu Qianqiu didn't expect to miss so many spirit stones. He said in a deep voice, "We can't hand them over all at once. We have to hide the rest for a rainy day. I found a good vein." "Ah, Uncle Master really found a good vein. That's enough for us to dig for a long time." Shi Xiaotian jumped in joy. "Eat something first." Yu Qianqiu passed a roasted hare to Shi Xiaotian. While eating he said, "Later, I will find a place to hide these spirit stones." Then he looked at Shi Xiaotian's reaction. If the latter showed even the slightest bit of hesitation, he would have to reconsider their future cooperation. To his satisfaction, Shi Xiaotian bit the hare and said without hesitation, "I'll follow Uncle Master's decision." In fact, Shi Xiaotian's thinking was simple. The spirit stones here save time and effort. Uncle Master could even bring him to such a good place. What was there not to trust? Moreover, he could bring food in at any time. He could be considered to be very capable here. "Good," Yu Qianqiu praised and said. "Don't call me Uncle Master in the future. It's making me old." "That's not good, right?" Shi Xiaotian let go of the hare. In this era where the hierarchy was strict, how could one not know one's seniority? Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "There's nothing bad about it." "All right, then what should I call Uncle Master?" Hee. The corners of Yu Qianqiu's mouth curled up slightly, but the smile froze on his face. Then he sighed with a pair of confused eyes. "Call me Boss." "Boss," Shi Xiaotian muttered to himself. "Why does it feel like a secular gang name?" "Yes, just call me Boss." Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up as he stared at him and said, "Little Tian, as long as you follow me wholeheartedly, I guarantee that you'll have a good life in the future, and I'll even bring you home." Shi Xiaotian, who felt that his future was bleak, seemed to have no other choice. He nodded and said, "I'll follow you, Boss." Quack. "Just you wait, cultivation world. I Hu Hansen am back." Yu Qianqiu laughed maniacally. That boss really made him feel good all over. Shi Xiaotian was stunned. "Boss, who's Hu Hansan?" Yu Qianqiu smiled sheepishly. "He's also a boss. After you finish eating, continue digging. I'll find a place to hide the spirit stones." The place he was talking about was naturally inside the golden bead. After 3 days, Gao Shiping, who was at the entrance of the cave, saw the 2 of them with a smile on his face. Yu Qianqiu secretly stuffed another high-grade spirit stone into his hand. The former was overjoyed. Sect leader Ong Kwangsung only got 1 high-grade spirit stone a month, but Gao Shiping got 1 every 4 days. At this rate, it would be amazing. That's strange. The supervisor who counted the spirit stones for Yu Qianqiu and Shi Xiaotian muttered. Gao Shiping, who was chatting with Yu Qianqiu, suddenly shivered. He turned around and asked, "What's wrong?" The supervisor replied, "The 2 of them have collected so many middle-grade and low-grade spirit stones. How could there not be a single high-grade spirit stone? Logically speaking, it's not possible. This is really strange." Yu Qianqiu, who had a guilty conscience, was also slightly surprised. When he heard that it was this question, he heaved a sigh of relief. He glanced at Gao Shiping meaningfully. Gao Shiping almost fainted. He thought to himself, "I thought it was something serious. He gave me the high-grade spirit stone. How could you see it from there? This guy is too meddlesome. Looks like he needs to adjust." He then shouted, "What kind of spirit stone you get is a matter of luck. If you have any objections, I can let you have a taste of mining. I only have 1 question for you. Have they completed their task?" When the supervisor heard that he was asked to mine, he immediately shivered. He quickly replied, Completed. Both of them exceeded their quota." Gao Shiping snorted coldly. When Yu Qianqiu and Shi Xiaotian were done checking, he pulled them out for a drink. The supervisor was so scared that he was in a trance for a long time. In a wooden hut, wine and dishes were already prepared. Gao Shiping smiled and said, "Junior Marshall Brothers' place is too dark and damp. This place is for you to stay temporarily. Come, let's drink." Yu Qianqiu did not stand on ceremony. After thanking Gao Shiping, he raised his cup and drank with him. Shi Xiaotian, who was at the side, ate and drank at the same time. He thought to himself that he had really followed the right person. There were so many delicious dishes that he did not even dare to think about in the past. He kept pouring wine for the two of them. After eating and drinking, Gao Shiping left. Yu Qianqiu asked Shi Xiaotian to stay with him. He did not let him return to that lousy cave. Shi Xiaotian was so touched that his eyes were brimming with tears. Yu Qianqiu only said one thing: "Work hard with me. Good days are still ahead." After saying that, he changed into a set of clean clothes that Gao Shiping left behind. He moved out a chair and picked some wildflowers. He lay outside and basked in the sun, smelling the fragrance of the flowers. He soon fell asleep with the smell of alcohol in his mouth. Wu Baoru woke up, but he was still ill. It should be known that it was not easy for cultivators to fall sick. The higher one's cultivation, the less likely it was for them to fall sick. However, he was so angry that he fell sick. His senior and junior brothers naturally knew the ins and outs of what happened that day. They did not know whether to laugh or cry and scolded Yu Qianqiu for being a scoundrel. At this moment, another accident happened. It turned out that Wu Baoru, who was still ill, could not be angry. The moment he got out of bed, he heard many disciples discussing his despicable and shameless behavior. They were all talking about how he bullied Yu Qianqiu. The rumors spread like wildfire. Wu Baoru was so angry that he vomited blood on the spot and fainted again. When he woke up, he shouted that he wanted to kill Yu Qianqiu. However, no one would let him do that because Lu Chongqing had already made arrangements. What kind of place was the Spirit Stone Mine? As the sect master of Onquangsung, how could Lu Chongqing not know that the reason he sent Yu Qianqiu there was to make him suffer a little? When he could not stand it anymore, he would naturally be able to get the secret easily. Lu Wanwan was one of the elders of Onquangsung. Today, he was entrusted by the sect master to look for Yu Qianqiu at the Spirit Stone Mine. Before he left, he brought a few outstanding disciples and grand disciples with the purpose of letting everyone gain experience. Among them was Yu Qianqiu's fairy sister Chu Ping'er. Hearing the news, Gao Shiping hurriedly used his qi to dispel the smell of alcohol and hurriedly welcomed them. Lu Wanwan did not reveal the main purpose of this trip. He only told him to bring his disciples to gain experience. Gao Shiping, who thought that the elders were here to inspect the work, heaved a sigh of relief. He immediately nodded and bowed as he personally led everyone to explain. When they saw the few sets of torture tools in the mine, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, especially when they saw the legendary Wolf Fang whips of the Spirit Stone Mine. The ferocious barbs on the whips were frightening. Anyone could see that the dark red color on the whip was dyed with blood. At the side, Chu Ping'er could not help but ask, "Marshal Uncle Gao, will the newcomers also suffer from this whipping?" Gao Shiping did not know why she asked such a question. He laughed and said, "Very few newcomers can complete the task. Most of them will not be able to escape this calamity." After saying that, he led everyone to the miner's residence. In the dark and damp cave, a few miners huddled together and were sleeping on the ground. When Gao Shiping walked to almost every cave, he shouted, "Wake up!" The sleeping miners immediately jumped up, as if it was a conditioned reflex. They stood together trembling with fear, not daring to make a sound. Looking at these skinny, dirty miners with tattered clothes, everyone could not help but sigh. Compared to Mount Qingguang, this place was simply hell on earth. They were all Onquangsung disciples, but they did not expect the disparity to be so big. They all thought, in the future we must not end up like this. Lu Wanwan's purpose for coming here was to find Yu Qianqiu. Therefore, he patiently followed everyone to look at the caves one by one. In the end, after looking at all the caves, he did not see Yu Qianqiu. Instead, he saw many familiar faces. Although they were all disciples of the younger generation, they had all treated him with great respect. Now that they had become like this, he could not help but feel somewhat rueful. Chu Ping also had the same goal. She wanted to see how the scholar was doing, but she was also afraid of seeing an unsightly and miserable sight. She could not tell what kind of mentality she was in. In the end, she did not see anything. She could not help but become even more worried. She thought, "It's said that people dying in spirit stone mines is a very common thing. Could it be that he also? Martial nephew Gao, are all the miners here?" Lu Wanwan had some doubts in his heart, and asked with a frown. Gao Shiping said respectfully, "Martial uncle, you know that some of the disciples have been taken care of by certain sect elders. Naturally, it is not good to leave them here. If Martial uncle wants to see them, please follow me." Seeing Lu Wanwan nod his head in agreement, Gao Shiping led everyone towards a row of wooden houses on the opposite side of the hill. Just as they walked up the hill, everyone smelled a strong smell of alcohol. Lu Wanwan turned his head to look, and saw a young disciple sleeping soundly on a reclining chair while basking in the sun. He could not help but frown and ask, "What's going on?" Actually, when Gao Shiping walked up the hill, he discovered Yu Qianqiu, who was basking in the sun. He was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat and thought, "My ancestor, didn't he change a good place for you to sleep? Of all places to sleep, you had to sleep here. This time I'm going to die because of you." Hearing Lu Wanwan's words, he hurriedly ran over and shouted, "Junior Martial Brother Yu, Junior Martial Brother Yu, hurry up and wake up. The sect elders are here." Yu Qianqiu was sleeping soundly. He turned around, and was unwilling to get up. Suddenly, he heard someone say that the sect elders were here. In his mind, he immediately thought of Wu Baru, and immediately had the urge to touch a brick. Unfortunately, he did not feel anything. He immediately jumped up and shouted with sleepy eyes, "Damn it! Lingering around like a ghost, where is he? Where is he? My ancestor! Please have mercy with your mouth." Gao Shiping almost shouted out loud. He hurriedly pulled him and said, "Junior Martial Brother, stop shouting. He's right here." Chapter 24. It's Martial Uncle Yu. The disciples looked at each other. This was beyond everyone's expectations. Logically speaking, Yu Qianqiu should have been punished to do hard labor, and his fate should have been similar to those miners. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu's clothes were bright, and his mouth was glistening with oil. His body reeked of alcohol, and there were a few flowers in his hair. He looked like he had just woken up, and it was obvious that he was living a comfortable life. Martial Uncle Lu. When Yu Qianqiu saw that it was Lu Wanwan and not Wu Baru, he smiled and walked over to greet him. The flowers in his hair swayed as he walked, and it was very conspicuous. The disciples couldn't help but laugh. Gao Shiping didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Junior apprentice brother, pluck the flowers from your hair." "Oh." Yu Qianqiu touched his head, and realized that the flower he had placed on his head before he fell asleep was still on his head. He smiled awkwardly and threw it away. He then walked in front of Lu Wanwan and said with a sullen face, "Martial Uncle Lu, please help me ask. When can I go back? This is really not a place for people to stay. I really can't stand it anymore." Lu Wanwan snorted. "Can't stand it? I don't think I've seen anyone sleeping in broad daylight on Mount Qingguang." As he said this, he coldly stared at Gao Shiping and asked, "Doesn't he need to do hard labor? Didn't the law enforcement disciples tell you when they sent him here? This disciple doesn't dare." Gao Shiping cursed all 18 generations of Yu Qianqiu's ancestors in his heart, and hurriedly replied, "Junior apprentice brother Yu works the same as all the miners. Every day he exceeds his quota. If Martial Uncle doesn't believe it, you can check the accounts of the other supervising disciples." Lu Wanwan naturally didn't believe it. He had been in Ongquangsung for so many years, and naturally knew a thing or two about the situation of the Spirit Stone mine. He had never heard of anyone who could exceed their quota every day. After calling the disciple in charge of the mining accounts, Lu Wanwan was speechless after seeing the accounts. At this moment, Shi Xiaotian, who was sleeping, heard the commotion and ran out. When he saw everyone, he immediately stood there, not daring to move. Yu Qianqiu didn't care so much. He noticed Chu Pinger, and couldn't help but think of her fair skin when she took off her clothes that day. His eyes couldn't help but glance at her curvaceous body a few times. At this moment, he was the center of attention, and Chu Ping was naturally looking at him as well. Seeing that he was unscrupulously looking at places he shouldn't be looking at, her face flushed red, and she angrily said in her heart, "This person is obviously a peerless talent. But why does he always pretend to be a lowly person to hide his true colors? Does he think I don't know?" Ever since she found out that those two songs were made by Yu Qianqiu, she had always thought that he was deliberately putting on an unrestrained front. Pfft! A mischievous and pretty female disciple beside Chu Ping suddenly burst into laughter. It immediately attracted everyone's attention. Yu Qianqiu praised in his heart. Although she was not as good-looking as the fairy sister, she was still a beautiful girl. Not bad. Not bad. Lu Wanwan frowned and lightly shouted, "Xiar." However, the pretty female disciple didn't seem to be afraid of him at all. She pouted and said, "Grandpa, I just saw Shiji Chu Ping blushing under Shi Shuyu's gaze, so I couldn't help but laugh." This person turned out to be Lu Wanwan's biological granddaughter, Lu Xiar. Look at what she said. Everyone's eyes immediately turned to the two of them. Chu Ping's face became even redder, and she lightly pinched Lu Xiar. "Misunderstanding, misunderstanding." Yu Qianqiu smiled awkwardly. Suddenly he was stunned, and stared at Chu Ping and said in surprise, "You are Chu Ping?" Chu Ping nodded lightly. Lu Xiao giggled and said, "Why? You must have heard of my Shiji's name. The two songs that Shiji composed are famous in the whole of Ongguangsung." Seeing that the topic had changed, Gao Shiping, who was eager to hear it, also said in surprise, "So you are Shiji Chu Ping? I have also heard of Shiji's talent here. I wonder when I will have the chance to listen to Shiji sing those two songs." Hearing this, even Lu Wanwan sighed and said, "This is not nonsense. Chu Ping can really be considered as the most talented woman in Ongguangsung. The two songs that she composed are really the best in the world." "Two songs?" Yu Qianqiu looked at Gao Shiping suspiciously, and then looked at Chu Ping. He seemed to have heard that the latter could sing White Fox. What was the other song? Lu Xiar looked at Yu Qianqiu with her hands behind her back, as if she was looking at an antique. She shook her head and said, "It seems that Shiji is really ignorant. Haven't you heard of our Ongguangsung's 1,000 Years of Unrequited Love? This song is now circulating in the whole cultivation world." 1,000 Years of Unrequited Love? Yu Qianqiu murmured, then shook his head, indicating that he had never heard of it. Chu Ping's face was so red that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. She kept pulling Lu Xiao to prevent her from speaking, but the latter said arrogantly, "Hey, Shiji, if you have never heard of this, then have you heard of Mandarin Duck and Butterfly Dream?" "What did you say?" Yu Qianqiu suddenly let out a strange cry. "Mandarin Duck and Butterfly Dream. Have you never heard of it?" Lu Xiao pouted and repeated it again. She was almost despising Yu Qianqiu to the ends of the earth. Now, Yu Qianqiu was 100% sure that his song had been plagiarized. The strange thing was, when did the song Mandarin Ducks and Butterflies in a Dream spread out? Even if he said that he had sung it, no one would believe him even if he was beaten to death. Forget it. Yu Qianqiu looked at Chu Ping with a sad look. She probably didn't know that it was him. He shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "It seems that I am really ignorant." "Humph. It is true." Lu Xiao rolled her eyes and added, "Damn. Vomiting blood." Yu Qianqiu looked at the sky speechlessly. "Everyone listen to me," Chu Ping shouted and stood out with a red face. "I have said many times that these two songs were not written by me, but you all didn't believe me. Actually, this song was written by Shiji Yu." "What? It was him. It can't be right. Say it again." Everyone at the scene was stunned, wondering if they had heard wrongly. Everyone looked at Yu Qianqiu, whose mouth was covered in grease after eating the meat. How could he write such a song with his appearance? Not to mention them. Even Yu Qianqiu couldn't believe it himself. What he couldn't believe was how Chu Ping knew that he was the one who wrote it. "Senior Chu, you said that those two songs were written by Shiji Yu? Did I hear wrongly?" Lu Xiao's eyes widened. Then she stared at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Tell me, is it true?" Everyone stared at him, as if they wanted to eat him alive. Yu Qianqiu suddenly felt that something was wrong. He decided that he would not admit it even if he was beaten to death. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "How is that possible? Shirji Chu, please don't joke around. I don't even know how to sing. How could I have written a song? Everyone felt that what he said made sense. They looked at Chu Ping'er, wondering why she said that. Sigh. Shirji has always been low-key. He hit his cultivation level and his talent. I know that Shirji is not a person who likes to show off. So when people asked me, I didn't say who Shirji was. In the end, everyone thought that I was the one who wrote those 2 songs, which made me feel helpless. Now that Shirji is right in front of me, does Shirji still want to Chu Ping'er to lie in front of everyone? In the stone cave in the forbidden area, Shirji wrote a song with every step. Chu Ping'er saw such amazing talent with her own eyes. How could it be wrong? Does Shirji still want to deny it? Chu Ping'er said with fascination. Ah, Yu Qianqiu was stunned. You heard the song I sang in the stone cave in the forbidden area? How is that possible? When I taught it to the white fox, she was alone. Speaking up to this point, he suddenly realized that he had let the cat out of the bag. Ah! Everyone screamed and looked at Yu Qianqiu in disbelief. If he still couldn't tell who was lying, he would really be an idiot. Chu Ping'er smiled sweetly and said, Shirji, please don't blame me for eavesdropping. I heard it unintentionally, but Shirji's heavenly voice made Ping'er unable to move an inch. That's why I silently memorized it and sang it. I didn't expect other Shiji and Shimi to hear it and sing it. Please forgive me, Shirji. So that's how it is. No wonder. Yu Qianqiu murmured. Suddenly he said, but I didn't have 1,000 years of unrequited love. I'm a fox that has cultivated for 1,000 years. Shirji, don't you remember? I heard it from the woman in the stone pavilion. I don't know what name Shirji came up with. Just the name Dream of Mandarin Ducks and Butterflies is so fascinating. Only Shirji could come up with such a name. Ping'er wouldn't dare to give Shirji's heavenly voice a title. The so-called 1,000 years of unrequited love was just something my Shiji and Shimi came up with. Now, I would like to ask Shirji to tell me the name of the song. Ping'er will be very grateful. Chu Ping'er bowed politely. Yu Qianqiu's heart thumped wildly when he saw that gesture. He couldn't help but think of the day when he took off all his clothes. He thought to himself that since he had been discovered, he might as well pretend to be a gentleman in front of a beauty. Thus, he placed his hands behind his back and turned to look at the horizon. He sighed and said slowly with a hoarse voice, Forget it. Forget it. I didn't expect to be discovered. I accidentally overheard my master talking about the woman in the cave. When I saw her, I was inspired and wrote a song for her. The title of the song didn't have any other meaning. I just called it White Fox. That's right. As for the second song, I saw that she was always depressed and wanted to comfort her. Thus, I wrote a song for her. Dream of Mandarin Ducks and Butterflies for her. Shirji Chu, do you have any questions? His words and actions had suddenly taken a 360-degree turn. It was hard for everyone to accept. Chu Ping'er shook her head and said softly, White Fox. So it's called White Fox. It's elegant and not pretentious. It adds the finishing touch to the song. It's a good name. It's much better than the vulgar 1,000 years of unrequited love. Shirji's talent is shocking. Ping'er admires it greatly. I just don't know when I'll be able to hear Shirji's masterpiece again. Damn it. That's fine too. Yu Qianqiu had nothing else to say. He could only wave his hand with his back facing her. As for this matter regarding art, the others didn't seem to understand it. Hearing Chu Ping'er's words, it seemed to be true. When they looked at Yu Qianqiu again, it was as if they were looking at a high mountain, although they could only see his back. Everyone was stunned. Oh my, boss is amazing. Shi Xiaotian looked at his boss with admiration. Gao Shiping did the same. Even Lu Wanwan took a long time to regain his composure. He said, Could it be that the woman you were talking about in the forbidden cave is the white fox spirit imprisoned in the pavilion? Chu Ping'er nodded. Apart from the 3 of them, no one else knew what the white fox was. Lu Xiao'er immediately pestered Chu Ping'er to ask what was going on. Chu Ping'er slowly told her a sad and touching love story. The female disciples heard it and burst into tears. When Lu Wanqian saw his granddaughter sobbing, he immediately came to his senses and recalled the mission he had come here for. His face immediately sank, and he shouted coldly, Yu Qianqiu, come with me. I have something to ask you. Chapter 25. What he wanted to ask was naturally related to the secret. The two of them stood far away. No one knew what they were talking about. They only saw Lu Wanwan pointing at Yu Qianqiu and scolding him, who was scared like a chicken. When the two of them came back one after another, Lu Wanwan's face was not good. Obviously he was angry, and Yu Qianqiu was dejected, as if he had been greatly wronged. It made people wonder what the former had done to the latter. In fact, it was nothing. Lu Wanwan made it clear and directly asked him for the secret. Yu Qianqiu denied it and insisted that there was no secret. He only said that his master often gave him some elixirs in the past, and he really didn't know the secret. He made up his mind. Since they said there was a secret, he would blame everything on his dead master. You want to know? You can ask my master. After learning the truth from Wu Baoru, Lu Wanwan had already regarded Yu Qianqiu as a scoundrel. Naturally, he didn't believe what he said. After asking for a long time, he still didn't get the reason. Lu Wanwan was so angry that he shouted. In the end, he even threatened Yu Qianqiu, but Yu Qianqiu still insisted that he didn't know. Lu Wanwan said, "You won't tell me, right? You will tell me when you are obedient." The two of them parted on bad terms. Then, he pulled Gao Shiping aside to talk to him with a sullen face. Everyone could see that the atmosphere was a little strange. His granddaughter Lu Xiaer, however, opened her big eyes carefreely and pestered Yu Qianqiu, asking him to write a song for her. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Lu Xiaer's exquisite figure that was already beginning to take shape. He cursed the old man in his heart for being so arrogant. "If one day you make me angry, I'll make your granddaughter pregnant. Let's see if you can still be so arrogant then." But on the surface, he still pretended to be lost. He smiled bitterly and said, "Why should I write a song? It's still unknown whether I can live past this year." Chu Ping, and others were shocked when they heard this. Lu Xiaer asked, "Martial uncle, what's wrong?" "What's wrong?" Yu Qianqiu forced a smile and said in a desolate tone, "It's a pity that my teacher died early, and there's no one to protect him. Now that I've offended Elder Wu, I'm afraid that even the sect's elders will want to kill me. Today, your grandfather came here on behalf of the sect leader to make me plead guilty and submit to the law." They looked at each other and thought to themselves, "No wonder Elder Lu brought us here today. I thought he really wanted to broaden our horizons." "Nonsense, my grandpa is not that kind of person." Lu Xiaer defended her grandpa. "Sigh, whether it was nonsense or truth, it didn't matter. Does it mean anything to me? What's in it for me to lie to you?" Yu Qianqiu's expression was bleak and bitter. Everyone was speechless. Suddenly, Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up and he said emotionally, "If I, Yu Qianqiu, am really guilty as a man, I will take responsibility for what I've done. Your grandpa doesn't need to say anything, and I will kill myself here to apologize to the world. But I'm innocent, so how am I supposed to plead guilty? Although my master is dead, if you want me to compromise, I absolutely can't do it. I'd rather die standing than live kneeling." His words were firm and resolute, and his imposing manner was even more awe-inspiring. Everyone who heard him felt deep veneration. Even Lu Xiaer believed his words and lowered her head sadly. Lu Wanwan and Gao Shiping came back. The former glanced at Yu Qianqiu and sneered, while the latter shook his head helplessly. Yu Qianqiu looked at Gao Shiping and said with a faint smile, "Senior martial brother Gao, you don't have to feel embarrassed. I guess martial uncle wants you to help me? It doesn't matter, just do as he says." Gao Shiping was taken aback. He looked at Lu Wanwan with an embarrassed look on his face. Lu Wanwan snorted and said, "You refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit." Combined with the scene in front of them, everyone believed that Yu Qianqiu was telling the truth. It seemed that Elder Lu was really going to punish martial uncle Yu. Someone became anxious. Lu Xiaer immediately stomped her feet and shouted at Lu Wanwan, "Grandpa, how could you do such a thing?" Lu Wanwan glared at her and shouted, "This is an adult's matter. Why are you interrupting? Let's go back." Lu Xiaer did not comply and made a fuss. In the end, she was dragged away by her grandpa. The group of disciples also turned into flowing lights and followed her. "Old thing, how dare you threaten me? Today, I'll give you some extra food so that you can go back and enjoy the show, so that you won't come here for nothing." Yu Qianqiu murmured as he looked at the people flying away. Although he said it softly, he did not mean to avoid the two people beside him. Sure, Xiaotian was not an idiot. Combining what his big brother had said before, and listening to what his big brother had said, his eyes that were originally solemn and stirring were instantly filled with shock. Although Gao Shiping did not know what had happened, he could tell that Yu Qianqiu was scolding Lu Wanwan. He could not help but admire Yu Qianqiu's courage. He even dared to scold an elder of the sect. Thinking about it, he felt satisfied. Since Yu Qianqiu dared to scold him in front of him, it was obvious that he did not treat him as an outsider. Senior brother Gao, tell me, how does Grand Elder Lu want you to torture me? Yu Qianqiu sneered. Gao Shiping shook his head and smiled bitterly. Junior brother, it seems that you have really offended the sect leader. Elder Lu actually came here to pass on the sect leader's decree. He did not say anything else. He only told me that from today onwards, junior brother, your mining volume will be doubled. Sigh. You know, I can protect junior brother and other things, but the mining volume of spirit stones will be supervised by the disciples of several branches. I dare not be biased. I am afraid that junior brother will not be able to complete the task. As for the punishment, I will also. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and interrupted him. Senior brother, you don't need to say any more. I know. Senior brother, just do what you have to do. You want to stump me with such a small matter? How childish. Gao Shiping secretly felt that it was a pity. In this way, he was afraid that his share of income would be gone. Those were upper-grade spirit stones. Yu Qianqiu seemed to see through Gao Shiping's thoughts. He smiled and said, Don't worry, senior brother. 1 or 2 spirit stones is not a problem for me. You and I will continue as usual. However, there is one thing that I have to trouble senior brother with. His words had already made some things clear. Gao Shiping understood that Yu Qianqiu was clearly telling him that he would not be lacking in upper-grade spirit stones. His eyes immediately lit up. He patted his chest and said, If junior brother has no problem, I naturally have no problem. Just tell me what you need. Yu Qianqiu smiled. He was very fond of people who did things straightforwardly after receiving money. These kinds of people were not afraid of you reaching out, but afraid that you would not accept. He said in a low voice, I hope senior brother can prepare more food and wine for us to bring into the cave. After all, if the mining volume increases, it will be a big problem if we don't have enough to eat. I was wondering what it was. Junior brother, don't worry. I will take care of this. Gao Shiping promised. Yu Qianqiu then said to Sure Xiaotian, Xiaotian, go and rest now. Once you are full of energy, you will start work tomorrow. Gao Shiping also said, You are Sure Xiaotian, right? Follow junior brother well. When the time comes, I will treat you well. What a joke. Helping Yu Qianqiu well was the same as helping him well. Of course he would say that. Sure Xiaotian nodded and went back to his room without saying another word. Actually, he was not worried at all. Not to mention doubling the size of the place boss found. Even if it was 3 or 4 times bigger, he would still dig it out. After the 3 of them left, Yu Qianqiu lazily lay back on the chair and continued to bask in the sun. He was thinking about a problem now. The conflict between him and Ong Kwangsung had reached this point. It seemed like it was impossible for him to stay here for a long time. However, it was even more impossible for him to tell anyone about his secret. In this cultivation world where the strong preyed on the weak, that was his trump card to save his life. He would not tell anyone about it. The current solution was that as long as he could stay in the spirit stone mine for 1 more day, he would do his best to fish for as many spirit stones as he could. When he had enough spirit stones, he would leave. If this place did not keep him, there would be another place for him. What was there to be afraid of? The next day, after entering the spirit stone mine, Sure Xiaotian noticed that boss's face was much more serious. After entering the mine, he did not walk slowly and directly brought them to the mining area. He was secretly puzzled. What was boss worried about? With so many spirit stones, would he be afraid of not being able to complete the task? Before digging, Yu Qianqiu cautiously instructed, Xiaotian, from today onwards, do your best to mine for middle-grade spirit stones. Leave the low-grade spirit stones for now. We'll talk about it later. Got it? These 2 days, Sure Xiaotian was already extremely impressed by Boss. Seeing that Boss was so serious, he understood that he must have his reasons. He did not ask much and nodded heavily. Yu Qianqiu looked at him appreciatively and nodded. The two of them immediately split up and started the mining in full swing. Within 3 days, Yu Qianqiu returned to the Golden Pearl. Seeing the tall pile of spirit stones in the forest, he did not seem too satisfied. He knew that money was not enough when it was needed. Since he had embarked on the path of cultivation, he must do his best to lay a good foundation for the future. Originally, this elegant place was filled with spirit stones. White Fox was a little unhappy. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu rarely showed up, she wanted to say a few words to him. However, when she saw the rare seriousness on his face, she knew that something must have happened. Just as she was about to ask a few questions, that hateful guy disappeared again. As he wished, Gao Shiping obtained another high-grade spirit stone. Yu Qianqiu had also completed their quest. Seeing that, Gao Shiping was filled with admiration. Yu Qianqiu gave them good food and wine. Halfway through the wine, Gao Shiping stopped drinking and asked them to continue. Yu Qianqiu asked curiously, "Senior Marshal Brother Gao, you haven't drunk to your heart's content. Why don't you drink?" The sect sent people to transport the spirit stones. I still have something to arrange. Originally, all the miners had to go to work. However, Junior Marshal Brother, you two don't have to. Just drink without worry, Gao Shiping said. Yu Qianqiu nodded and saw him out. Not long after the wine and food were finished, Gao Shiping came back with a sad face. He smiled bitterly and said, "Junior Marshal Brother, I'm going to break my promise. This time, the elder leading the team is Elder Lu Wanqian. When he saw that you weren't among the miners, he reprimanded me and ordered you to work with the other miners. Junior Marshal Brother, I'm sorry. Damn it. That old fart, he's going all out against me." Yu Qianqiu stood up and cursed. However, he had no choice but to go with Sure Xiaotian and Gao Shiping. At the cave where the spirit stones were stored, Lu Wanwan, who was standing in front of a group of miners, snorted when he saw Yu Qianqiu. This brat's granddaughter had been quarreling with him for the past few days. The dozen elders beside him also looked over. They were all familiar with Yu Qianqiu. Seeing that everyone was present, Lu Wanwan took out a small golden dragon from the storage pouch at his waist. He made a few hand seals and shot a few white lights at the little golden dragon. Then, he tossed the golden dragon into the air. The golden dragon emitted a dazzling light and grew with the wind. In an instant, an incomparably huge and lifelike dragon landed in front of everyone. Lu Wanwan made another hand seal. A giant scale on the dragon's abdomen fell down, creating a large hole. The dragon's scale happened to be the stepping stone to enter the cave. Yu Qianqiu was amazed. Although he had heard of this transportation artifact before, it was his first time seeing it. After the group of miners was inspected, they were all herded into the cave. The huge cave was filled with bags of spirit stones. Yu Qianqiu drooled at the sight of it. Then, they were ordered to carry the bags of spirit stones into the dragon's abdomen. Sure Xiaotian was determined to follow Boss closely. If Boss carried one bag, he would carry one bag. Wherever Boss went, he would follow. The space in the dragon's abdomen was really big. With so many miners carrying the stones in an endless stream, it was unknown how many bags they had carried. In short, Yu Qianqiu couldn't remember. When they were almost done, the two of them entered the cave again. The cave was already empty except for 2 bags. Yu Qianqiu couldn't be bothered to carry the stones anymore. He pulled Sure Xiaotian to the side. There would naturally be someone else to carry the stones. As expected, 2 miners directly walked over and carried the bags on their shoulders. "Put them down." A familiar voice came from behind. Yu Qianqiu turned his head and saw Lu Wanwan staring at him coldly. Lu Wanwan slowly said, "You two carry them out." Yu Qianqiu was speechless. In his heart, he wanted to bite Lu Wanwan to death. The two of them carried the last 2 bags of spirit stones out. Lu Wanwan shouted again, "Everyone get out and accept the inspection." In the dragon's abdomen, the two of them put down the spirit stones. Just as they turned around and walked to the door, a red light suddenly fell from the sky. It directly shot into the group of gathered miners. In an instant, a loud explosion sounded. A powerful shockwave blasted out in all directions, along with the shattered corpses. Standing at the entrance of the dragon's abdomen, the two of them were dumbfounded. Before they could react, they were pushed back inside by the shockwave. Demonic cultivators are attacking. Disciple Ong Kwangsung, follow me to fight. Lu Wanwan's hysterical shout came from outside. The two elders guarding the dragon's abdomen instantly shot out. Chapter 26. Just as Yu Qianqiu and Shi Xiaotian were about to get up, they heard a loud crash above their heads. The dragon's body shook nonstop. When they looked up, they saw several large dents on the top. The sounds of fighting outside seemed to be getting more and more intense. The dragon's body was affected, and the ear-piercing sound of metal shook their ears until they felt dizzy. They really couldn't take it anymore. The two of them staggered toward the door, almost unable to stand steadily. Holding onto the door, Yu Qianqiu shook his dizzy head and looked out. He was immediately dumbfounded. Figures were flying everywhere in the sky and on the ground. Colorful rays of light whistled and attacked in all directions. Explosions were everywhere, and the crazy shouts were like thunder. While they were in a daze, a dazzling blood-red beam suddenly shot towards them. Oh my God! Yu Qianqiu let out a strange cry. Just as he retracted his head, a loud sound rang out. The door immediately caved in. The seam before them shook violently, and the strong airflow shook them back again. Yu Qianqiu, who fell into the cabin, slapped his buzzing ears with both hands. Before he could recover, another series of violent collisions hit the dragon's body. He was almost stunned. He really couldn't take it anymore. He quickly tore 2 pieces of cloth from his clothes and stuffed them into his ears. When Shi Xiaotian saw this, he also followed suit. With the cloth blocking his ears, the effect was much better. Feeling the violent tremors under his feet, Yu Qianqiu slowly stood up. Shi Xiaotian gestured to him if he wanted to go out. Damn it! Going out now is not courting death. Yu Qianqiu looked outside the cabin and quickly waved his hand, indicating that he didn't want to go out. The madness outside did not seem to be weakening. Instead, it seemed to be getting more and more intense. Oh my God! Is this the battle between cultivators? This was the first time he saw such a scene. He was shocked and filled with emotions. This is 2F** King crazy. So this is the path I'm walking on. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but feel his blood boil. He clenched his fists tightly and waved them around. Awesome! Cultivators, don't run. I'm here to join in the fun. Of course, when he said that he wanted to join in the fun, he didn't mean that he was going to die now. He was probably referring to one day in the future. Shi Xiaotian couldn't hear what his boss was saying, but he could tell that his boss was very excited. Due to the violent shaking of the dragon's body, the stacks of spirit stones in the warehouse finally toppled over. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. With so many spirit stones, why would I need to dig? Anyway, I don't plan to stay in Ong Kwangsung for long. In short, if not now, then when? Baby, I'm coming. Yu Qianqiu waved his hands and touched the spirit stones. Bags of spirit stones disappeared without a trace as his hands touched them. Shi Xiaotian suspected that his eyes were playing tricks on him. After confirming that he was not mistaken, he was so shocked that his mouth could not close, and his mind went blank. When the last bag of spirit stones disappeared, the wealth that Ong Kwangsung had accumulated in this spirit stone mine for more than half a year had been swept clean. Yu Qianqiu looked inside the warehouse, and after confirming that there was nothing missing, he patted his stomach in satisfaction. His gaze fell on the dumbfounded Shi Xiaotian, and he chuckled. He walked over and said, "I'll send you to a fun place." After saying that, he didn't care if Shi Xiaotian heard him, or if he was willing. He grabbed his hand and threw him into the golden bead. The one who found it the most unbelievable was probably the white fox. She finally knew how crazy Yu Qianqiu was. When the first bag fell from the sky, the white fox looked at it leisurely. But for the rest of the meal, the bags did not stop. They fell crazily until they piled up into a small mountain. She could no longer be indifferent. In a flash, she appeared in the bamboo pavilion, out of the forest, and stood in front of the huge pile of falling objects. She frowned slightly, wondering what Yu Qianqiu was doing. Her slender, jade-like fingers drew a white ray, and the cloth bag tore open with a hiss. The spirit stones scattered all over the ground. The white fox was slightly stunned, and her slender fingers drew a few more white rays. Hiss, hiss, hiss. More than 10 cloth bags were cut open, and the spirit stones rolled down. Her alluring red lips opened slightly, and she was stunned. Could it be that this mountain of cloth bags were filled with spirit stones? Oh my God! Where did all these come from? While she was still in shock, someone suddenly shouted in the sky. She looked up and saw a figure land on top of the cloth bags and roll down. Shi Xiaotian fell to the ground and got up. A peerless beauty was standing in front of him. Both of them asked in surprise, "You are?" Yu Qianqiu originally wanted to hide in the golden bead, but there was a serious problem in front of him. When he entered and exited the golden bead, he would return to the same place he entered from. If he entered from the warehouse, what if the transportation artifact shrank back to its original size when he came out? What would happen then? Would it become a concentrated essence? This was a risk he could not take. He shuddered at the thought of it. Yu Qianqiu hid at the entrance of the warehouse, waiting for an opportunity to slip out and escape. The commotion outside was getting quieter and quieter. Occasionally, one or two angry shouts and sounds of fighting could be heard. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu pounced outside. Just as he was about to land on the ground and escape, he felt something tighten around his neck. A large hand was strangling him. The force was so strong that it almost killed him, but it was enough to make his brain short of oxygen for a short period of time, and his eyes rolled back. Yu Qianqiu's limbs flailed, and the person who was holding his neck seemed to sense his difficulty in breathing. The 5 fingers loosened slightly, and the person held his neck in front of him. Yu Qianqiu also had a chance to catch his breath. Just as he was about to escape, he suddenly saw a group of people floating in the air in front of him. All of them were holding weapons, and among them was an enchanting and charming woman, wearing a bright red palace dress. As the wind blew, her 2 fair and slender legs could be vaguely seen in the red gauze, and it was extremely alluring. She was smiling in the direction of Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu's eyeballs almost popped out. He thought to himself that it was not too late to leave later, and that he should take a look first. The enchanting woman with red makeup looked down and smiled charmingly. "Lu Wanwan, it has been 100 years since we last met. I have missed you so much, and I have specially come to meet you today." Why are you holding this kid in front of you? Could it be that people become timid as they get older? Do you need to find a kid to boost your courage? Hee. The group of people behind her also burst into laughter. Lu Wanwan, with messy hair and a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, angrily shouted, "Demonic woman, shut up. Don't think that I don't know what you are planning. You know that I, Ong Kwang Sung, am transporting spirit stones today, so you came here to steal them. The devil path evildoers are extremely shameless, and only dare to do some sneaky things. If you have the ability, come to my Qingguang mountain." Damn it! It's really this old bastard. With such a loud voice, he sprayed spittle all over my face. If you want to die, then go ahead and die. Why are you pulling me and not letting go? I've never heard of anyone pulling their own people down with them before they die. Yu Qianqiu could tell that the person who was holding his neck was Lu Wanwan. Hee. Go to Ong Kwang Sung. The woman with red makeup laughed tenderly. She stretched out her arms and gently stroked her hair. Although Ong Kwang Sung is getting weaker with each generation, those old monsters hiding in the back mountains still have some ability. I am just a weak woman, so how would I dare to take risks? Therefore, I can only bully a big man like you here. This doesn't seem to be too much. It's a pity that the spirit stones that Ong Kwang Sung has accumulated for more than half a year are going to belong to me. Sigh. Lu Wanwan, seeing that you are acquainted with me, as long as you kneel down and beg for mercy, I can consider letting you live. The people behind her burst into laughter again. This elder sister's voice was really pleasant to listen to. Yu Qianqiu was a little dazed as he listened. His back gradually leaned against Lu Wanwan's body. 100 Charm Demon Lady, do you see who I'm holding in my hand? As Lu Wanwan spoke, His 5 fingers tightened again. Yu Qianqiu, who had just leaned against him, was pinched by the neck and pushed away. The latter held his breath, and his throat emitted a caw-caw sound. Fortunately, his 5 fingers loosened after that. The people floating in the air were stunned when they heard this. The 100-charm demon lady carefully sized up Yu Qianqiu. She didn't see anything special about him, nor did she feel that she had seen him before. She couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. Lu Wanwan, you want to threaten me by simply holding a low-level disciple of Ong Kuang-sung as a hostage? Do you really think that I am as stupid as you? Haha. Lu Wanwan laughed wildly. Demon woman, others may not know, but do you think I don't? For the past 100 years, my junior brother has been depressed because of you, and has been lonely all day. I don't think you have forgotten my junior brother. Have you? Are you really here to steal spirit stones? You must be here to vent your anger after hearing about my junior brother's death, right? The ones who killed my junior brother are the Daluo sect. Why don't you go and vent your anger on them? Humph. Do you know who is in my hand? It is the direct disciple, who is as close to Hao Wuwei as father and son. Demon woman, if you dare stand in my way, I will definitely kill him. Yu Qianqiu's body trembled when he heard the first part of the sentence. He vaguely guessed that the person Lu Wanwan was talking about was his master. However, when he heard that the person was called Hao Wuwei, he immediately understood that Lu Wanwan was probably trying to pass off a fish's eye as a pearl and find an opportunity to escape. But this was also good. If that big sister was really his master's lover, he really wouldn't dare to have any improper thoughts. The 100-charm demon lady stared at Yu Qianqiu with a glint in her eyes. Her expression turned solemn, and she said sternly, "So what if he is Hao Wuwei's disciple? The disciple of such a heartless person is definitely not a good person. Even if you don't kill him, I will kill him as soon as possible." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned into a red shadow and pounced forward like a ghost. F***ck. No matter how beautiful a girl is, her life is more important. Yu Qianqiu was startled. Just as he was about to hide in the golden bead, his neck suddenly tightened, and his mind temporarily blanked out. He vaguely felt that he was thrown away by Lu Wanwan. As soon as he regained consciousness, he felt a soft fragrance wrap around him. When he opened his eyes again, he was already lightly landing on the ground. Above him, a group of people chased after Lu Wanwan. Huh. Strange. I'm actually fine? Yu Qianqiu couldn't believe it, but both sides wanted his life. He looked around and saw that there was no one around, the pungent smell of blood, and the ground was littered with broken corpses. Obviously, most of them were Ong Kuang-sung's people. He could also vaguely see that a few of the corpses belonged to Ong Kuang-sung's elders. He didn't dare to have any improper thoughts anymore. With a thought, he disappeared from where he stood. Chapter 27. Stop! The 100-charms beauty waved her hand and shouted after Zhang Xian. A group of people stopped in the air. One of her subordinates asked, "Palace Master, why did you stop? Lu Wanwan can't escape. Leave him alive to inform Ong Kuang-sung. More than 10 original soul stage elders died, and so many spirit stones were lost. I believe Ong Kuang-sung will feel the pinch." The allure beauty smiled. The man frowned and said, "Palace Master, don't you want to kill him? I'm afraid it will bring trouble to the Demon Illusion Palace." Humph. Do you think Ong Kuang-sung won't know it was us who killed Lu Wanwan? The 100-charm demon lady said coldly. I want the Blue Light sect to know that it was done by my Demon Illusion Palace. I don't think they have the guts to come to my Phantom Mountain. A bunch of cowards. A trace of hatred flashed through her eyes as she looked at the direction Lu Wanwan escaped in. Go back and transport the spirit stones back to the palace. She shouted, and everyone flew back to the spirit stone mine. In the sky above the spirit stone mine, the allure beauty looked around in confusion. She had planted a soul sense on the young man, but why couldn't she sense it? She could clearly feel that the divine sense she planted had been easily dispelled by someone. She was at the early stage of passing tribulation. How could someone who was not at the middle stage of passing tribulation easily dispel the divine sense she planted? Moreover, it had happened in an instant. This meant that the person who had dispelled the divine sense was most likely at the late stage of passing tribulation. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to dispel it in such a short time. Palace Master, come down and take a look. Something strange has happened. The subordinate who was transporting the dragon body reported. The pretty figure in the air suddenly flashed and entered the warehouse. Looking at the empty warehouse, the allure beauty's face was no longer seductive. She frowned and her face was full of solemnity. The whole warehouse of spirit stones was gone. How was this possible? He clearly saw that the blue light sect had brought the spirit stones in before he made his move. Who on earth had such magical powers to be able to transport all the spirit stones away in such a short period of time? It was simply unimaginable. Recalling the matter of her divine sense being removed by someone just now, she was suddenly startled. Her figure flashed into the air, and she shouted, "Everyone, return to the Demon Illusion Palace immediately. We can't stay here for long." The group of subordinates could hear the urgency in the palace master's voice. Not daring to slack off, they flew into the sky and followed the palace master. As soon as Yu Qianqiu entered the Golden Pearl, he saw the conspicuous mountain and shouted, "I'm rich." Immediately, he leaped over and had intimate contact with it. He rolled on top of it and danced with joy. He patted the bag full of spirit stones and laughed heartily. After a long time, he stood up and looked at the majestic figure before him with a satisfied expression. Just as he was shaking his head, he saw Shi Xiaotian pacing back and forth at the side. He was slightly taken aback, and only then did he remember that he had brought Shi Xiaotian in as well. Logically speaking, he did not want Shi Xiaotian to know about Jin Zhu, but in the heat of the moment, he did not care so much. So be it. After observing him for this period of time, this kid should be a trustworthy person. Suddenly, he realized that something was wrong. Shi Xiaotian seemed to have been walking in circles within a radius of tens of meters. Could it be that this kid had nothing better to do and was taking a walk? Unlikely. He could not help but shout, "Xiaotian, what are you doing?" No response. He shouted a few more times, but there was still no response. It seemed that he could not even see that he was standing in front of him. Yu Qianqiu felt strange, and walked over to see what he was doing. But as soon as he walked within tens of meters of Shi Xiaotian, there was a force that repelled him. The harder he tried, the stronger the force became. Yu Qianqiu understood that there was no one else here, except for Sister Bai. She must have done something. He immediately passed through the forest, and came to the bamboo house. In the bamboo pavilion, the music was still playing, and the beauty was sitting. He laughed and applauded. The beauty really plays the zither well, and sings a good song. The white fox did not even bat an eyelid, and ignored him. Yu Qianqiu sat in front of her and said with an awkward smile, "Good sister, release the people outside. He's my friend." The music suddenly stopped, and the white fox glanced at him coldly. A certain someone jumped in fright. He had never seen such a sharp look from her. The former said coldly, "It's because I know you sent him in, or else I would have dug out his shifty eyes long ago. He's not welcome here. I'll let him out when you decide to send him out." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He thought to himself, how did Shi Xiaotian's eyes offend you? Looking at the peerless beauty in front of him, he immediately reacted, and shook his head with a bitter smile. "With your beauty, which man wouldn't take a second look at you? Forget it, I won't say any more. Xiaotian, you're out of luck. Turn around." The white fox said with a slightly surprised look. "What?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. The white fox glared at him and scolded. "I told you to turn around. Didn't you hear me?" "No way. Sister, you won't even let me look." The other party's pretty face turned cold. Yu Qianqiu did not dare to speak anymore, and obediently turned around. Two slender fingers reached out and touched Yu Qianqiu's back. Before he could react, he heard the white fox say, "It's done." He turned around and saw a transparent flame on top of her slender fingers. "What is this? It's on my body." Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously. The white fox frowned and said, "Someone planted a strand of divine sense on your body. If it wasn't discovered in time, the person would have immediately discovered your whereabouts the moment you appeared outside. Judging from this divine sense, the person is a woman." I'm afraid her cultivation level has already reached the early stage of the tribulation passing stage. Could it be her? Yu Qianqiu let out a strange cry. He had already suspected the temptress of 100 charms, but he was not sure why she had done this. Could it be that she had discovered that he had stolen the spirit stones? The white fox did not say anything else. A ball of flame appeared on her fingertip and wrapped around the strand of divine sense, turning it into smoke in an instant. Looking at the strand of divine sense that had turned into smoke, Yu Qianqiu's expression turned serious. He tapped his fingers on the stone table happily, thinking about what he should do from now on. The white fox did not disturb him. This scene was familiar to her many years ago. The scholar was frowning as he pondered over the questions in his book, while she watched quietly from the side. She liked this feeling very much. The white fox could not figure out why the temptress had planted a divine sense on his body, so she did not think about it for the time being. Kuang-sung would not go back. He had enough spirit stones now, so it was time for him to find a place to cultivate. It was not enough to cultivate here. The temptress would definitely leave, and Kuang-sung would have to return to the spirit stone mine sooner or later. He should take advantage of the fact that neither of them were around to leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, even if he managed to improve his cultivation level here, he would have to leave one day. He could not hide here for the rest of his life. With his cultivation level, it was easy to hide in the golden pearl and not be caught, but it would be difficult to run out of the spirit stone mine. He did not know if there was still anyone in the spirit stone mine. No way. He had to go out and take a look now. If he could not do it, he would immediately come back to hide. He did as he said. With a move of his divine sense, the scenery changed, and he appeared in the spirit stone mine. It was quiet all around. The smell of blood had not dissipated, and no one cared about the disgusting severed limbs. No one. This was a good opportunity to escape. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed. He raised his mysterious heaven skill to the limit, and immediately ran in the opposite direction of where Kuang-sung came from. His cultivation level was still far from flying on a sword, but his running and jumping speed was not something an ordinary person could compare with. He escaped like a wisp of smoke in the desolate mountains. Not long after, he was already far away from the spirit stone mine. Thinking back to the scene at that time, he felt a little scared. Speaking of which, he really had to thank Lu Wanwan. If he hadn't forced him and Shi Xiaotian to carry the last 2 bags of spirit stones, the 2 of them would have been like the other miners, with their heads separated from their bodies. The situation at that time was too sudden. Even if he had the golden pearl, he would not have made it in time. Sigh, cherish your life, and try your best to escape. Just a while after Yu Qianqiu left, almost 100 streams of light came from the direction of Kuang-sung and landed on the spirit stone mine. If anyone who knew Kuang-sung saw this, they would be shocked. Almost all the elders of Kuang-sung were there. Kuang-sung's sect master Lu Changqing and elder Lu Wanwan were among them. They were led by 3 old men with white hair and beards. Even if Yu Qianqiu was here, he would not have seen these 3 people. Everyone glanced at the spirit stone mine that looked like a slaughterhouse. Their faces were all pale. When the 3 old men in the lead closed their eyes shone brightly. Just this point alone was enough to show the high cultivation level of the 3. Moreover, the 3 of them could stand in front of sect master Lu Changqing. It was obvious that their status was not ordinary. The face of the old man in the middle twitched. He said slowly, "Look around." Other than the 2 old men on the left and right, everyone behind him received the order and dispersed. Soon, the elders returned and reported the situation. When they heard that all the spirit stones had been robbed, and there were no survivors in the mine, the old man in the lead snorted and said, "Lu Changqing, what did you do as a sect master? Why did you store the spirit stones for half a year, before they were shipped back to the sect?" Lu Changqing's expression changed. He knelt on the spot and said fearfully, "Master, the sect still has a lot of spirit stones in storage. The mining volume of the 5 spirit stone mines is increasing. I'm afraid that we won't be able to store all the spirit stones, so..." "Enough," the old man cut him off. "Spirit stones are for the sect disciples, to increase their cultivation level. Why do we need to store so many spirit stones? Since the mining volume has increased, why didn't the distribution of the disciples increase? Could it be that the overall cultivation level of the sect disciples has increased? Would they be afraid of not having spirit stones to enjoy in the future? Short-sighted thing. Why did I choose you as the sect master in the first place? All the disciples in the spirit stone mine are dead, and all the spirit stones have been robbed. What a shame. Lu Chongqing, how do you want me to explain this to the patriarchs when I return? Master, please don't be angry. I know I was wrong. I am willing to accept the punishment. Lu Chongqing, who also looked like an old man, had lost all of the dignity of a sect master. Humph. The old man glanced at the kneeling disciple and looked at the two old men on the left and right. He said in a deep voice, Junior brothers, it seems that I, Ong Kwangsung, have been quiet for too long. Some time ago, the Deluo sect killed my disciples and stole my spirit herbs. Now the demon illusion palace has come to kill and rob. I wonder who will come to visit next time. I just broke through to the middle stage of tribulation passing a few days ago. It's time for me to play a role. What do you think, junior brothers? One of the old men said coldly. If I remember correctly, Ong Kwangsung should be one of the top 10 cultivation sects of the Huaxia Empire. The other old man smiled faintly. It seems that the cultivation world is too quiet now. Chapter 28. After 2 sunsets and sunrise, he could vaguely see the village with smoke rising from the chimneys. Believing that Ong Kwangsung would not find him, Yu Qianqiu, who was panting, stopped and returned to the Golden Pearl. The big pile of spirit stones was still there. Looking at Shi Xiaotian again, he was sitting there dejectedly, as if he had no hope of getting out. Yu Qianqiu looked at him and shook his head. He passed through the forest and walked into the bamboo pavilion. He smiled bitterly at the beauty in the pavilion. Sister, let him out. I'll bring him out. The white fox stopped playing the zither and glared at him. Without saying a word, she slowly stood up and walked out of the bamboo pavilion. Her white clothes fluttered as she walked out of the forest. Seeing the scattered spirit stones in the forest, she couldn't help but frown. Yu Qianqiu followed closely behind. The graceful figure in front of him was still as beautiful as ever, but the feeling that could entice him in the past was no longer there. For some reason, he no longer had any desire to get intimate with the white fox. Perhaps it was because he was used to calling her big sister, and subconsciously, he really did treat her as his big sister. The two of them stood in front of Shi Xiaotian and watched him mumble to himself. He turned a deaf ear to the two people standing in front of him. The sky was so close, but they couldn't see anything. The strange thing was, Yu Qianqiu looked around and didn't see any formation. How could it trap Xiaotian? He looked at the white fox beside him and sighed. Drawing a prison? Sister, you're really good. Teach me when you can. I can't use it before I reach the foundation building stage. The white fox said softly. Her slender fingers formed a seal, and dozens of white lights shot out from all directions around Shi Xiaotian. Yu Qianqiu looked carefully. The things that were shot out were actually spirit stones. The sister beside him waved her arm, and dozens of spirit stones fell onto the pile of cloth bags. So they were using local materials. Just like that, they trapped Shi Xiaotian for 2 days. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. In the future, don't bring irrelevant people in to disturb my peace. Do you hear? White Fox scolded. Her words really sounded like an elder sister lecturing her younger brother. Yu Qianqiu smiled sheepishly and said, Elder sister is right. Humph. The white fox snorted coldly and disappeared without a trace. Yu Qianqiu knew that she was playing her lousy zither again. He thought to himself that she was not tired of playing it over and over again. He wondered if it was time to find a boyfriend for her. But then he smiled. Probably not. This cheap sister was completely infatuated with love. Boss, where are you? Come and save me. Don't tell me you're really going to abandon little Tian. Shi Xiaotian, who was sitting on the ground, kept muttering to himself. When Yu Qianqiu heard what he was saying, he couldn't help but laugh. Of all the people he could provoke, he had to provoke the vixen, who had cultivated for 1,000 years, and had reached the late stage of tribulation passing. He walked over and kicked his butt twice, shouting, "What kind of dream are you having? Come back with me." It was Boss's voice. Sir Shoutian was stunned. He jumped up and turned around. That familiar face with an evil smile was right in front of him. He was so excited that he wanted to say something, but he saw Boss's hand reaching out and pulling him. Then his vision blurred. When he could see clearly again, the scene had changed. Fortunately, Boss was still in front of him. "Boss!" Sir Shoutian grabbed Yu Qianzhou's arm, fearing that he would run away again. Then, Sir Shoutian began to talk nonstop, pouring out all of his tragic experiences. Yu Qianzhou looked at him coldly and said, "Are you done?" Sir Shoutian was stunned. He nodded stiffly, indicating that he was done. Following that, Yu Qianzhou gave him a torrent of abuse. The gist of it was, "Do you know who you're messing with? That's my sister. If it wasn't for me, she would have dug your eyes out." Sir Shoutian was a bit dumbfounded by the scolding. He stared at his boss's face for a long time before muttering, "How can two siblings look so different?" Fortunately, Yu Qianzhou didn't hear him. Otherwise, he would have been fiercely provoked. "Boss, where is this?" Sir Shoutian looked around and asked. Yu Qianzhou looked at him and smiled. He let out a long breath and said, "I also don't know where this place is. But from today onwards, the two of us will no longer exist in Ong Kwangsung. We also don't need to look at Ong Kwangsung's face anymore." He was right. When Lu Wanwan returned to Ong Kwangsung, many people asked about Yu Qianzhou. The answer they got was that he had probably died in the hands of the Enchantress of 100 Charms. This made all the elders sigh. The capital of the Huaxia Empire was a bustling place. There was an endless stream of horses and carriages, and people came and went. Both sides of the smooth streets were lined with inns and tea houses. There were all kinds of shops. Walking on the streets, the sound of peddlers could be heard everywhere. From time to time, beautiful women dressed up could be seen. They were in groups of 3 to 5, trying to attract people. Looking at the signboards behind them, it was nothing more than Yihong Brothel or 100-Flower Brothel. The ladies in the brothel had long trained their eyes. They could tell who was rich and who wasn't. For example, the two people walking on the street, the ladies were afraid to avoid them. Yu Qianzhou and Sir Shoutian chuckled. Their current appearances were indeed unsightly. They had traveled thousands of miles and were covered in dust. Finally, they had arrived at this bustling capital city. Why did they come here? Because Sir Shoutian was homesick. Also, the two of them had left Ong Kwangsung and didn't know where to go. Yu Qianzhou was also interested in seeing the capital. National Pillar General's residence? Far away from the bustling city, in front of a majestic courtyard, Yu Qianzhou read the signboard. He looked at Sir Shoutian suspiciously and said, "Are you sure this is your home? Are you sure?" He couldn't be blamed for asking this question. The latter had led him on a few wrong paths while searching for his home. In the end, he had gone through so much trouble, and now he was led to a place with such a scary signboard. Sir Shoutian shook his head silently. Looking at the majestic courtyard, tears welled up in his eyes. Yu Qianzhou looked at him in disdain. This unlucky child was crying so easily. It was really unbearable. However, it seemed like he was right. He didn't say anything else. He crossed his arms and waited quietly. The two of them were silent for a while. Just as Sir Shoutian was about to knock on the door, the hurried sound of horse hooves came from afar. The two of them turned their heads to look. Dozens of horses galloped over from afar. Soon, they arrived before the two of them. "Stop!" The leading young general in dark silver armor waved his hand and shouted. He pulled the reins in his hand. The strong horses neighed, and the dozens of people behind them stopped the galloping horses. Dozens of people jumped off their horses at the same time, their armor clanking loudly. Their imposing manner was truly extraordinary. Wow, this is so much more handsome than in the movies. Yu Qianzhou was envious. The door of the National Pillar General's residence opened slowly with a dull sound. A servant walked out and shouted, "Second young master is back." He ran to the young general with a smile and took the reins. The young general glanced at Yu Qianzhou and Yu Qianzhou at the door. His gaze landed on Sir Shoutian. He paused for a moment. Then he looked forward and strode inside. Second brother. The young general who had just stepped on the stairs was shocked. He turned his head slowly and looked at Sir Shoutian in disbelief. He looked at him up and down. Then, he turned and said in surprise, "Third brother? Is that you, third brother?" "Second brother. It's me. I'm Shoutian." Sir Shoutian stumbled over. "Third brother, it's really you," the young general exclaimed. The two brothers ran over and hugged each other. The servant holding the horse paused for a moment, then immediately handed the reins in his hand to a soldier beside him, and hurriedly ran into the mansion. After a few words, the young general suddenly pushed Sir Shoutian's shoulder away. He looked at his younger brother and said, "Third brother, didn't you get taken away by the immortals to cultivate? How did you end up like this? And this is..." The last sentence was directed at Yu Qianqiu. The latter nodded and smiled at him. Sir Shoutian was speechless. With tears on his face, he shook his head and choked. "Are father and mother healthy?" "Haha." The young general laughed and patted his brother's shoulder. "Come, let's talk inside." Then, he waved at Yu Qianqiu and said, "This brother must be a friend of my third brother. Please come in and have a seat." Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands in thanks and followed the two brothers into the residence. The moment they entered, they could feel the oppressive aura of nobility. They were surrounded by pavilions and flowers. Servants shuttled back and forth, showing the extraordinary status of this family. Before the three of them reached the richly ornamented main hall, a group of people with a beautiful woman in their arms hurried towards them. They saw her calling from afar, "Sander." On the other side, Sir Shoutian struggled free from his brother's arms and ran over, shouting, "Mother!" The mother and son, who hadn't seen each other for a long time, hugged each other and cried. The latter knelt down and refused to get up. Yu Qianqiu couldn't bear to watch the crying scene, so he closed his eyes to rest. Sir Shoutian's second brother glanced at him and frowned. "Mother, third brother, big brother is back." The young general smiled and turned around shouting, "Big brother, look who's here." Yu Qianqiu, who was resting with his eyes closed, also heard someone coming from behind. He opened his eyes and turned around. A young man dressed like a civil official walked in with a smile on his face. When he heard his second brother's words, he stopped smiling and looked at the person kneeling at his mother's feet. When he saw who it was, he exclaimed, "Third brother, why are you back? How did you end up like this?" As he spoke, he looked at his brother, who was dressed in rags, with surprise in his eyes. Sir Shoutian stood up and shyly called out, "Big brother!" "Haha, third brother is back. Good. Today is really a double blessing." Sir Shoutian's big brother clapped and laughed. Everyone was a little baffled by his words. The second general said in a daze, "Double happiness? Could it be that big brother has taken a fancy to some young lady? Since third brother is back, tell me about it." The civil official glared at his second brother and ignored him. He walked to Sir Shoutian and patted his shoulder, smiling. "Third brother, we're going to be kindred spirits soon." "Haha, come to think of it, it's quite a coincidence today. I was out patrolling with a few colleagues, and we met an immortal master with profound transcendence energy. That immortal master could tell at a glance that I have the root of wisdom, and has already agreed to take me as his disciple. Third brother, do you think we'll be kindred spirits in the future?" Haha. When he saw everyone looking at each other, he laughed even more complacently. Suddenly, his gaze fell on Yu Qianqiu, who was also dressed in rags. His laughter stopped abruptly and was replaced with arrogance. He frowned and snorted. "Who is this? Since when did the pillar of the state general's mansion become a place where people can come and go as they please?" Chapter 29. Are you referring to me when you say someone who can come and go as he pleases? Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes as he stared at him. A hint of fierceness flashed through his eyes, and a hint of coldness floated through his indifferent words. In his previous life, although he was part of the underworld, he was also an overlord of an underground kingdom. The aura that he exuded unconsciously made him look down on everyone else. Although the people present were also people who had been above others for a long time, they relied on their illustrious family backgrounds. Facing Yu Qianqiu's aura that had been tempered through killing and decisiveness, they immediately paled in comparison. The second son of the junior general was slightly surprised. He was also a man who had fought on the battlefield. He wondered what kind of person his third son's friend was. Judging from his aura, it was impossible for an ordinary person to fake it. There seemed to be a faint scent of blood in his aura. It was impossible to have such an aura without dozens of lives on his hands and a long period of experience as a decisive person. This aura seemed to be frequently seen on his father, the pillar of the nation. The others also felt that familiar aura and were momentarily speechless. The second son of the civil official, who had been arrogant just a moment ago, was stunned by Yu Qianqiu's words. The beautiful woman with tears on her face also stopped crying and looked at him in surprise. It was also Shi Xiaoyan's first time seeing Yu Qianqiu like this. It seemed that his big brother had really angered him. He shook his head slightly and walked to his big brother's side with a smile. He turned to everyone and said, "Mother, big brother, second brother. This is my martial uncle and also my savior. If it wasn't for martial uncle, I'm afraid that little Tian would never be able to see mother and my two brothers again." The reason why he introduced his big brother to his family as his martial uncle was obvious. He was naturally afraid that his family would look down on his big brother and cause trouble. He then introduced his three relatives to Yu Qianqiu. This person was actually little Tian's martial uncle. Wasn't that also an immortal? The few of them were surprised by how young Yu Qianqiu was. At the same time, they felt uneasy and thought that they had neglected him just now. One had to know that in the Huaxia dynasty, even the current emperor would treat cultivators with great courtesy. However, they had just cast them aside, and the head of the civil officials had even spoken rudely. The second general immediately bowed and said, "Junior Shi Yintian greets senior immortal." Yu Qianqiu nodded indifferently. The civil official leader was a little fearful as he bowed and said, "Junior Shi Yutian greets immortal elder. I didn't know immortal elder's identity just now and have offended you. I hope immortal elder will forgive me." Yu Qianqiu glanced at him coldly, showing no intention of forgiving him at all. The former's face immediately turned pale. Seeing her eldest son's embarrassment, the beautiful woman also saluted and said, "This mistress Li Hongyang greets immortal master. My husband is away on an expedition, and my eldest son lacks discipline. I hope immortal master will forgive us if we have offended you." Yu Qianqiu really didn't plan to let go of the Shi clan's eldest son. He had suffered so many sarcastic remarks in Ongquangsung, but he had no choice but to lower his head. He didn't think that a mere mortal would dare to speak rudely to him. This immediately ignited the suppressed anger in his heart. But this woman's words had a hidden meaning. "My husband isn't here. As an immortal, you wouldn't bully my son." Moreover, Shi Xiaotian was looking at him with a pleading expression, so he could only suppress the anger in his heart. "Madam, there's no need to be so courteous." His words meant that he would no longer pursue the matter of the eldest son. Li Hongyang and her three sons hurriedly thanked him and ordered the servants to prepare food and wine to properly entertain the immortal. Yu Qianqiu tactfully refused. They had only just met, and things had already turned out like this. What was the point of eating and drinking together? Actually, there was another reason why he didn't get angry. His cultivation was indeed not that great, only at the 5th level of qi refining. Even Shi Xiaotian had already reached the 7th level of qi refining. Although the latter still couldn't see through his cultivation, if they were to fight, who knows which side Shi Xiaotian would side with. In any case, it was impossible for Shi Xiaotian to help him beat up his own brother. Also, if his cultivation was exposed, would Shi Xiaotian still treat him as the boss in the future? This was really hard to say. He remembered that a certain elder brother with the surname Li once said, "When the people's hearts are scattered, it's not easy to lead a team." Finally realizing the importance of cultivation, he pulled Shi Xiaotian to the side and asked him to arrange a secluded place to cultivate. The latter immediately passed on his eldest son's words to his mother, and immediately the entire general's mansion became busy. The pillar of the state general's mansion had a spacious back garden, and a small courtyard in the most remote corner was quickly cleaned up. The general's mansion issued a ban, and without permission, no one was allowed to enter the back garden. Xiaotian, if your family asks about your experiences, I think you should choose to tell them. Knowing too much won't do them any good. Also, it's best not to let outsiders know about what we're doing here. Otherwise, if Ong Kwangsung finds out one day, we'll be in big trouble. Yu Qianqiu said. The small courtyard was remote and quiet, and he was very satisfied. At this time, there were only the two of them in the small courtyard. I understand. Shi Xiaotian nodded. A year quickly passed, and the back garden of the pillar of the State General's mansion became a mysterious place. Other than the third young master Shi Xiaotian, no one else had seen the immortal living inside. As for the matter of the immortal living in the back garden, the general's mansion had issued a strict gag order. Those who were lucky enough to see it that day would not say a word, and the other servants naturally didn't know. The servants who knew about it would secretly worship the small courtyard every day when they passed by the back garden. The legendary immortals lived there. The masters of the general's mansion were very happy that there was an immortal living in their house. They always felt that they had a backer, and their hearts were very secure. Most importantly, the immortal had the demeanor of an immortal and never disturbed them. As long as good wine and food were sent over every day, the immortal wouldn't even take a step out of the courtyard, let alone disturb them. But there was one person who was more depressed, the eldest young master of the general's mansion. Once, in order to show off to the immortal who wanted to accept him as a disciple, he mentioned that there was also an immortal hiding in his house. In the end, the immortal refused to accept him as a disciple, and even refused to see him. This was too painful for him. It was fine if he didn't know that he had the root of wisdom, but after knowing, it was simply too torturous. How many people could resist the temptation of immortality? So he set his sights on Yu Qianqiu, wanting to become his disciple, and pestered his third young master several times to recommend him. But his third young master didn't agree at all, and said, "Big brother, I really can't see where you have the root of wisdom. You must have been tricked by someone." He was obsessed and didn't believe it no matter what, thinking that his third young master didn't want to recommend him, because he had offended his martial uncle. And because of this, he blamed his third young master. There was one time when he was blinded by lard, and he barged into the small courtyard, intending to beg Yu Qianqiu to accept him as a disciple. In the end, the moment he stepped into the courtyard, he felt like he was in a fog, and he couldn't get out no matter how many twists and turns he went, and he didn't see a single person. This was originally a simple formation that Yu Qianqiu learned from the white fox in case someone barged in, and he set it up in the courtyard. Although it wasn't a powerful formation, it wasn't a problem to trap a mortal, but he didn't expect it to trap this guy. When Shi Xiaotian found out, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He could bring his big brother out, but it wasn't good for him to do that, so he could only beg Yu Qianqiu to let him go. After Yu Qianqiu understood why Shi Yutian was trapped, he shook his head and refused Shi Xiaotian, saying that he wanted to keep Shi Yutian trapped for a few more days, and if he didn't let his big brother suffer a little, he was afraid that there would be no end to it. Shi Xiaotian thought about it and agreed, but after 2 days, Li Hongyang became anxious, and she couldn't find her eldest son anywhere, and the imperial court was also looking for him everywhere. In the end, Shi Xiaotian was afraid that his mother and second brother would be too anxious, so he told his family that his big brother had barged into his martial uncle's courtyard and was trapped. Li Hongyang and Shi Yintian were shocked, and they quickly went to the courtyard in the back garden. But they didn't dare to enter the courtyard again. They saw Shi Yutian running around like a headless fly, and it was obvious that he was very weak since he hadn't eaten or drunk anything for 2 days. The mother and son immediately knelt in front of the courtyard and begged Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu thought that since the food and lodging belonged to him, he didn't want to go overboard, so he released Shi Yutian and warned him that if he barged in again, he wouldn't let him off lightly. This was only a small matter, but after the mother and son saw Yu Qianqiu's divine power, they respected him even more. After Shi Yutian had a taste of it, his heart itched even more, but he didn't dare to barge in again. Relying on the large amount of spirit stones in the golden pearl, Yu Qianqiu successfully broke through to the 10th level of qi refining in a short period of 1 year. Shi Xiaotian reached it earlier than him. After reaching the peak of qi refining, the next step was foundation building. After asking the white fox, a very serious problem was placed in front of him. Foundation building, core bearing, nascent soul, and tribulation passing were the 4 thresholds that cultivators couldn't cross. These 4 thresholds couldn't be crossed without the help of external forces, and the so-called external forces referred to the miraculous pills that could cleanse one's meridians. Why must one cleanse one's meridians? A cultivator's body was like a vessel. If the vessel wasn't strong enough, it wouldn't be able to bear a stronger cultivation. If one forcefully broke through, there would only be one result, and that was death by the explosion of the body. Yu Qianqiu asked the white fox, "You were trapped in the cave for so many years, and didn't take any miraculous pills. So how did you break through from the nascent soul stage to the tribulation passing stage? Now that I know this is the magical effect of the golden pearl, does that mean I can also use it to advance?" The white fox told him again, "This is not the same thing." The cultivation world was divided into 3 paths: human, demon, and ghost. The white fox belonged to the demon path, which was different from the other 2 paths. The demon path's cultivation and body refinement were carried out at the same time. If the body refinement was not successful, cultivation would be difficult. It was the hardest path to cultivate among the 3 paths, but it was also the most powerful among the 3 paths. The ghost path was the easiest path to cultivate. They didn't cultivate spiritual qi, but yin qi. As long as there was enough yin qi, they could increase their cultivation without any restrictions. However, due to the restrictions of the laws of heaven and earth, its power was also the weakest among the 3 paths. Although the human path was divided into the righteous path and the demon path, this was just a division between people. In fact, it was just a difference in the cultivation method. In the end, there was only one path. The human path was intelligent, and the 3 paths were respected. For the demon path, if they wanted to ascend to the immortal realm, they wouldn't have a chance if they didn't cultivate into a human form. Perhaps there was a gain and a loss. The laws of heaven and earth gave the human path the best, but gave it the weakest body. Therefore, the human path could think of many ways to increase their cultivation, but the body was the biggest restriction. In short, it told him that although the golden pearl was extremely strange, since it existed in the world, it had to follow the laws of heaven and earth. Some things couldn't be changed randomly, so it could help demons, but it might not help humans. The white fox also said, "When the golden pearl was in my body, although I didn't use it, I could feel the changes in my body and cultivation day after day." "How did you feel after swallowing it for such a long time?" Yu Qianqiu immediately became dejected, and told her that other than his physique becoming a little better, he didn't feel anything. The white fox sighed. This kind of treasure of heaven and earth must have its own advantages for the human, demon, and ghost paths. There was no other way. It seemed that he still had to get a building foundation pill to build his foundation. She also didn't eat it when he asked the white fox, so she didn't know how it was done. She only knew that the bigger sex should have the recipe to refine the building foundation pill. And it wasn't an important secret. It seemed that the spirit grass used to refine the pill was quite hard to find. Yu Qianqiu was depressed. If he had known earlier, his relationship with the Clear Sky sect wouldn't have been so stiff. He couldn't just run back now. Wasn't that courting death? Not only was he depressed, Shi Xiaotian was also depressed. Only now did he find out that this martial uncle of his actually hadn't passed the building foundation stage, causing him to hold on to a pile of spirit stones and cultivate with all his might. In the end, even if Yu Qianqiu gave him more spirit stones, he wouldn't dare to absorb them anymore. Why? The true qi in his body had already reached the limit of the aura refining stage. If he absorbed any more, his body would explode. Who would dare to play with their lives? In the courtyard, the 2 of them looked at the pile of spirit stones and sighed. Although these things were good, what could they do? Where to get the building foundation pill became a headache. Suddenly Yu Qianqiu shouted, I got it. Sure Xiaotian's body trembled, and his eyes lit up. Boss. You got away. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, doesn't your big brother know some *T celestial being? Go call your big brother over. I have something to ask him. Chapter 30. That's right. Sure Xiaotian slapped his forehead and ran out without saying anything else. After searching the residence, the servants said that the eldest young master had gone on an errand. He didn't want to wait any longer. He immediately ordered someone to prepare a horse and ran to the yamen, where his eldest brother worked. He anxiously found his eldest brother. When the latter heard that it was Yu Qianqiu who was looking for him, he ran out without even asking for leave. As for the sedan chair that he used to work in, he didn't want to sit in it anymore. He untied the horse at the entrance of the yamen and disregarded the civil official's politeness. He got on the horse and galloped home. The way he got on the horse was very smooth. He was indeed the son of the pillar of the state general. He had a good upbringing. Eldest brother, wait. That's my horse. Sure Xiaotian shouted at the entrance of the yamen. However, his eldest brother wouldn't hear him. Even if he did, he probably wouldn't come back. He had no choice but to let his eldest brother's sedan chair bearer carry him back. The servant of the general's residence was stunned when he saw Sure Yutian returning on a horse. He smiled and said, the eldest young master is back. Sure Yutian jumped off the horse and threw the reins away. He didn't have the time to care about him. He ran to the backyard and was about to enter when he seemed to think of something. He held onto the wall and shouted excitedly, Celestial Master, Sure Yutian is here. He was afraid that no one inside could hear him, so he shouted twice. Didn't he say he went on an errand? Why was he here so soon? Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. He then said politely, Yutian is here. Come in. He sounded like a senior talking to a junior. Sure Yutian didn't care about this. He accepted the order and walked in as if it was a matter of course. With the permission of the Celestial Master, he didn't encounter the same situation as last time. His anxiety turned into joy. On the steps under the eaves, the Celestial Master was looking at him with a smile. Sure Yutian was so excited that he couldn't speak. He knelt down and kowtowed continuously. What are you doing? I just want to ask you a question. Why are you so excited? I'm not even as old as you. Won't this shorten my life? Yu Qianqiu was a little dumbfounded. He didn't know that Sure Yutian would come before his younger brother could explain himself. He hurriedly walked down the steps and helped Sure Yutian up. He was so excited that his body trembled a little. Did your brother tell you everything? There is something I need your help with, Yu Qianqiu said with a smile. Sure Yutian nodded and shook his head. Yu Qianqiu frowned, not knowing what he meant. He hurriedly replied, Immortal Master, if there's anything you need, just tell me. As long as it's something I can help with, let alone one. Even if it's 100 or 1,000, it's not a problem. That's good. Yu Qianqiu nodded in satisfaction and said with a smile, Last time, I heard that you wanted to become the disciple of an immortal. Where does that immortal live? Can you take me to meet him? Sure Yutian hurriedly knelt down again and said, Please don't misunderstand, Immortal Master. I won't look for him again. I will follow you wholeheartedly from now on. With that he kowtowed again. This unlucky child. His imagination was really strong. As expected of someone trained in officialdom, he didn't answer the question, and always liked to kowtow. Yu Qianqiu was a little annoyed and shouted, All right. Stand up. Sure Yutian was so scared that he stood up obediently and looked at him in fear. Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice, I don't have any other meaning. I just want you to take me to him. I have something to do. Do you understand? He understood. So that was what it was about. He squeezed out a smile and said, That immortal is in the Spirit Stone Temple 30 miles outside the city. He's called the Spirit Stone Immortal. I'll take you there now. Damn it. This guy was a donkey. He couldn't be polite. Yu Qianqiu grunted and thought to himself, Spirit Stone Immortal? He must have a lot of spirit stones. I don't know if he has as many as I do. The two of them walked to the entrance of the general's mansion. Shi Yutian had just ordered the servants to prepare a horse when Shi Xiaotian arrived in a swaying sedan chair. He rolled his eyes at his big brother and asked for another horse. The three of them got on the horse. Shi Yutian led the way and ran out of the city. Out of the city, the three of them headed north. After running on the official road for a while, Shi Yutian led the two of them along a small path. Not long after, a dilapidated Taoist temple appeared on a small hill in front of them. When they reached the foot of the hill, Shi Yutian suddenly stopped his horse and pointed up. He said nervously, "The immortal lives there. He's the master of the Taoist temple. He has a rule that people who go up the mountain are not allowed to ride on a sedan chair or on a horse. Otherwise he won't meet them." The two of them looked at the small hill that was only a fart tall. They didn't expect there to be such a rule. They looked at each other. In the end, it was Yu Qianqiu who said with a smile, "That's pretty awesome. It seems like he's really capable. Forget it, let's follow the host. Let's go up." The three of them got down and tied their horses to a tree. They walked to the front of the Taoist temple. The door was closed. Yu Qianqiu gave Shi Yutian a look, asking him to knock on the door. The latter nodded and smiled bitterly. He walked to the door and knocked on the door. After a while, they heard footsteps from inside. The door creaked open, and a Taoist child's head popped out. Shi Yutian said with a smile, "Little master, could you please inform the master that..." Before he could finish, the Taoist child said angrily, "Why is it you again? My master said that he would never see you again." With that, the door was closed again. Shi Yutian was given the cold shoulder. He turned around and smiled at the two of them. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. "I'll do it." Shi Xiaotian knew about his brother and the Taoist temple. He knew that he had annoyed the person inside. So he went to knock on the door. After knocking a few times, the Taoist child inside shouted, "My master said that he won't be seeing any guests today." Shi Xiaotian turned around and spread his palms innocently, indicating that there was nothing he could do. He then pointed to the wall. It seemed like he was asking if they should climb over the wall. "Do I look like someone who would do that kind of sneaky thing?" Yu Qianqiu sneered. He squinted his eyes and looked around. The Taoist temple was not big. It occupied a small hill. There was nothing special about the surroundings. He did not expect such a powerful cultivator to live here. "Let me try." Yu Qianqiu glanced at the word Spirit Stone Temple on the Taoist temple. He walked to a millstone-sized bluestone opposite the door with his hands behind his back. The two brothers looked at each other, not knowing how he was going to knock. "Damn it. I'm giving you face, but you don't want it." Yu Qianqiu cursed under his breath. He stretched out his hand and lifted the 100-pound bluestone. Before the two brothers could react, they heard him shout, "Get out here." The bluestone in his hand flew into the wall. Bang! A loud sound came from the courtyard. Dust flew everywhere. Even standing outside, they could feel the ground shaking. The two brothers were dumbfounded. An angry voice came from inside. "Who dares to cause trouble in my Spirit Stone Temple? You bastard!" Yu Qianqiu replied in a loud voice. He hurriedly walked to the door of the Taoist temple and fiercely kicked it. With another bang, two pieces of the door directly flew in. "You're courting death." Following the angry shout, a figure jumped over the wall and flew out. As soon as the person landed, he saw Shi Yutian. He pointed at him and scolded, "So it's you again. How dare you bring people here to fight? Do you want to die?" After saying that, he glanced at the other two. Shi Yutian was already scared stiff by Yu Qianqiu's actions. When he heard the person's words, he quickly knelt down and kowtowed. "Immortal Master, please forgive me. Immortal Master, please forgive me." The younger brother saw his older brother's actions and frowned. He pulled him up and shouted, "Big brother, you're giving the general's residence too much face. Putting on such a big show. I was wondering what kind of bullshit immortal had such a high cultivation level. So it's just an old man at the 10th level." Yu Qianqiu laughed. With one look, he could tell that this person was also at the 10th level of the qi refining stage. The person who came had a sage-like appearance. He didn't look very old, about 40 years old. He had 3 long strands of beard, and his face was flushed. If he held the green dragon crescent blade in his hand, he would look like Guan Yu from the TV shows in his previous life. The person who came was the temple's master, Spirit Stone Immortal. He was shocked when he saw the other two. Needless to say, Shi Xiaotian was also at the 10th level of the qi refining stage. However, he couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu. It didn't matter if he couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation level. What was worse was that Yu Qianqiu could see through his cultivation level at a glance. This meant that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation level was higher than his. Moreover, both of them didn't look very old. To have such a cultivation level at such a young age, they must be disciples of some big sect. Although one couldn't judge one's age by appearance in the cultivation world, they were not people he could afford to offend. Thinking about this, the matter of him being hit by stones was already a small matter. Spirit Stone Immortal's expression changed. He quickly bowed to Yu Qianqiu and said, "I didn't know Senior was coming. Spirit Stone, please forgive me for my offense." Shi Yutian was stunned by Spirit Stone Immortal's respectful attitude. What would happen if even an immortal respected him? He looked at Yu Qianqiu with a fiery gaze. Being addressed as senior by such an old person was a little hard to accept. Yu Qianqiu thought about it and felt relieved. The cultivation world was a place where the strong preyed on the weak. Whoever was strong was awesome. Since the other party couldn't see through his cultivation level, it wasn't wrong to address him as senior. He smiled and said, "No need to be so polite. I have something to ask you." Spirit Stone Immortal nodded and said respectfully, "Senior, please come inside." Yu Qianqiu glanced at Shi Yutian, whose eyes were shining, and said to Lil Tian, "I'll be right back. You two wait for a moment." The two brothers agreed. Seeing how respectful their master was, the boy inside the door quickly ran back to prepare tea. The two brothers didn't wait for long outside the door. Suddenly, they heard the sound of fighting coming from inside. Shocked, Shi Xiaotian flew into the courtyard. Chapter 31. Just as Shi Xiaotian landed in the courtyard, a figure flew out of the Taoist temple's main hall and landed in front of him. When he saw who it was, he was shocked. It was none other than Yu Qianqiu. Shi Xiaotian quickly helped him up. Then Spirit Stone Immortal jumped out of the main hall's entrance. He pointed his sword at Yu Qianqiu and scolded, "I was wondering which expert came to cause trouble. So it's also a level 10 qi refinement cultivator. How dare you?" Shi Yutian, who had sneaked in, happened to see this scene. The thought that his master couldn't beat Spirit Stone Immortal appeared in his mind. Yu Qianqiu looked at his tattered robe and wiped the moisture from the corner of his mouth. The back of his finger was smeared with blood. He narrowed his eyes and sneered. When he and Spirit Stone entered, they were polite and asked some questions, and Spirit Stone Immortal answered them sincerely. It turned out that Spirit Stone Immortal had agreed to take Shi Yutian as his disciple, but it wasn't because he had a cultivation bone. In fact, Shi Yutian didn't have a spirit root. Spirit Stone Immortal only took a fancy to his identity and wanted to use him to do things in the secular world. Later, when he heard that there was an immortal hiding in his house, Spirit Stone Immortal immediately gave up on the idea. He was afraid of getting into trouble. Unexpectedly, this Spirit Stone had an extraordinary background. He was born in the Huaxia Empire's #1 cultivation sect, the Supporting Immortal Island, and his grandfather was an elder of the Supporting Immortal Island. After his grandfather passed away, Supporting Immortal Island declined in his father's generation. Supporting Immortal Island was different from other sections. It had a strange rule. If a disciple failed 3 times in a row, they would be chased out of the sect to make a living on their own. Spirit Stone Immortal Island was chased out of Supporting Immortal Island and ended up here. Perhaps he was afraid that Yu Qianqiu would look down on him. He told Yu Qianqiu a secret. Although he wasn't doing well now, it was still possible for him to return to Supporting Immortal Island. Because his grandfather was an elder, he had an Supporting Immortal medallion. This was something only elders and above had. Anyone with a spirit root could use the token to join the Supporting Immortal Island. However, the token could only be used once before it was taken away. Thus, He wanted to see if there was a chance for him to reach the foundation establishment stage outside before going back. Otherwise, if he ran back rashly and failed to reach the foundation establishment stage next time, he would be chased out again. Then, he would not have a chance to go back anymore. Yu Qianqiu had just escaped from Ongquangsung. He had no place to get foundation building done. So he came here to inquire about foundation building done. Now that he heard that this guy actually had foundation building done, how could he not be happy? He then asked Yu Qianqiu if anyone could join Fuxian Island with a token. Spirit Stone did not suspect anything, as he had already determined that Yu Qianqiu was a disciple of some other sect. He confidently told Yu Qianqiu that Fuxian Island only recognized the token, and not the person. Yu Qianqiu was delighted. He asked Spirit Stone if he could give the immortal supporting token to him. When Spirit Stone heard this, he got a huge shock and scolded himself for talking too much. However, he was afraid that Yu Qianqiu would snatch it from him, so he tactfully refused. Spirit Stone's guess was right. Yu Qianqiu really had the intention to rob him. Seeing that soft talk didn't work, he could only force it from Spirit Stone. However, this immortal supporting token was Spirit Stone's last hope of joining the supporting immortal island. Naturally, he was unwilling to give it to Spirit Stone. One wanted it forcefully, while the other didn't. The two of them finally started fighting. Because Spirit Stone couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, he was rather afraid at first. He resisted with all his might. After a few moves, he was shocked to discover that Yu Qianqiu was only Qi refinement level 10. Spirit Stone's confidence was greatly boosted. Only then did Yu Qianqiu realize that although their cultivation levels were similar, Spirit Stone's battle experience in the cultivation world was far from Spirit Stone's. Hence, the scene that Shi Xiaotian and his brother saw happened. "Boss, let me do it." Shi Xiaotian stared at Spirit Stone. No need, you stand to the side." Yu Qianqiu sneered and pushed Shi Xiaotian away. In his subconscious, he was still the boss of the underworld. Since he was the boss, if he couldn't win and let his lackeys fight, then he wouldn't be able to survive in the future. Spirit Stone's confidence was greatly boosted. "Young man, I'll give you a chance. Go back and improve your cultivation before coming back." Just as Yu Qianqiu was about to scold him back, he suddenly felt his dantian heat up. He secretly circulated his energy to check, and saw that the golden pearl in his dantian was emitting a golden glow. His whole body suddenly became warm. The meridians that were broken by the palm strike were actually slowly healing. So the golden pearl had such a magical effect? It was indeed a good item. Yu Qianqiu, who had calmed down, stared at the sword in his hand. This was the sword that his master, Hao Sansi, had given to him. This was the first time he used it in a fight. He had clashed a few times just now, but there wasn't even a scratch on it. The quality was indeed good. It just didn't feel as smooth as the machete from his previous life. Damn it! What bullsh Astra's tea cultivators. Today he had finally experienced it. If one's cultivation hadn't reached the foundation building stage, fighting was no different from fighting with mortals. They couldn't fly, and it was even more impossible for them to casually swing their swords like the white fox. If they used all their strength, they might be able to use the move air-splitting palm, but the opponent wouldn't just stand there and let you chop them. I don't believe that I, your father, was considered an expert in one-on-one fights and group fights in my previous life. Today, I won't be able to defeat you. Thinking of this, he pointed the sword in his hand at Spirit Stone and coldly said, "I'll ask you again, are you going to give me the item or not?" Spirit Stone was stunned. He couldn't win, yet he still dared to be stubborn. He couldn't help but laugh evilly. "You really don't know life from death. I gave you a chance, but you don't want it. Then, you can stay here and don't leave." After he finished speaking, he fiercely pounced forward and stabbed with his sword. Meeting on a narrow path, the courageous wins. A phrase flashed in Yu Qianqiu's mind. With a sigh, he swung his sword to block the sword that was stabbing at him. Immediately, he held the sword with both hands and used all his strength to wildly hack at it. The long sword whistled through the air as it chopped down. Spirit Stone was slightly startled. He raised his sword to block the attack and dodged to the side. Clang! He suddenly felt his palm go numb from the impact, and his sword almost fell out of his hand. He quickly took a few steps back. However, the other party followed up as if he didn't care about his life. He held the sword with both hands like it was a knife, and hacked at Spirit Stone in a frenzy. Yu Qianqiu chased after Spirit Stone, who was dodging all over the place. His sword wanted nothing more than to hack him in half. Clang, clang, clang. The long swords clashed nonstop. Shi Xiaotian, who was originally secretly worried for Yu Qianqiu, was dumbfounded. Today, he finally understood a principle. So swords could be used like this. Boss's sword dance was astonishing. It was simply unforgettable after seeing it. It was like a torrential storm of attacks without any regard for his life. Shi Yutian, who was hiding at the side, was also a little dumbfounded. So this was how immortals fought. They didn't seem to be much different from the hooligans on the street. They didn't have any of the legendary elegance at all. He couldn't help but ask himself, even if I could cultivate in the future, would I be able to do this? In an instant his heart turned gloomy, and his thoughts of cultivating became colder. Spirit Stone, who was full of confidence just a moment ago, suddenly felt miserable after a few moves. He had never seen someone fight with a sword like this. The hand that was holding the sword was almost unable to hold it. It was a pity that he had never practiced using his left hand. Otherwise, he could switch to using his left hand. That way, he would be able to hold on for a while longer. Spirit Stone fled in all directions in the courtyard. He really couldn't hide anymore, so he swung his sword to block once. However, something happened that made him tremble with fear. He had unknowingly hidden in a dead corner between two side rooms. The hand that was holding the sword was already trembling from the impact. He couldn't help but be scared out of his wits. He thought to himself, "My life is over. Don't you dare hurt my master." The voice of a boy came from behind Yu Qianqiu. The boy raised a big iron rod that was used to strike a bell, and fiercely smashed it towards Yu Qianqiu's head. Yu Qianqiu took a moment to take a look. He turned around and slashed with his sword. The iron rod that was made of ordinary iron was immediately split into two. How could the boy have the strength to hold something so strong? After the web between his thumb and index finger was split open, he was immediately dumbfounded when he saw the thing on the ground. Yu Qianqiu shouted, "Scram!" Then he flew over and kicked the boy's abdomen. Ah! The boy screamed and his body flew up. While he was still in the air, he spat out a mouthful of blood. When he hit the ground, he spat out another mouthful of blood and fainted on the spot. The faces of the two Shi brothers twitched. They didn't think that Yu Qianqiu wouldn't even let a child go. This was too cruel. Shi Xiaoyan's eyes flashed and he suddenly shouted, "Boss, be careful." Although the boy didn't succeed in his sneak attack, he had bought time for his master. Ling Shi saw that Yu Qianqiu had kicked his disciple away, and it just so happened that Yu Qianqiu's back was facing him. He instantly felt that this opportunity couldn't be missed, and he fiercely stabbed with his sword. Hearing Shi Xiaoyan's warning, Yu Qianqiu didn't see what was happening behind him. He could easily guess what Ling Shi was going to do. He loudly shouted, "Go to hell!" He fiercely swung his sword and turned around. Immediately, he saw his opponent's long sword stabbing towards his abdomen. A hint of fierceness flashed in his eyes. Ignoring the sword that was stabbing towards him, he gripped his sword with both hands and ruthlessly chopped at his opponent's head. No! Shi Xiaotian couldn't help but scream when he saw that his boss was going to suffer serious injuries. Even if he didn't die, he still wanted to take his opponent's life. However, he didn't know that Ling Shi was even more shocked. He thought that even if he couldn't kill his opponent, he could still force him to retreat and create an opportunity for himself to escape. However, this guy was simply a lunatic and didn't care about life or death at all. "I have a feud with you for killing my father. Is it worth it for you to do this?" As this thought flashed through his mind, Ling Shi hurriedly withdrew his sword and fiercely retreated. Bang! Yu Qianqiu went berserk. He couldn't control his sword, and the corner of the wall on one side of the room collapsed, nearly burying Ling Shi. The latter trembled with fear as he looked behind him. There was no way out anymore. In front of him, Yu Qianqiu stepped on the collapsed brick wall and passed through the rising dust. Wielding his sword, he pressed forward with a murderous aura. Fight! Ling Shi fiercely brandished his sword and stabbed forward. A cold light flashed before his eyes, and with a clang, the sword in his hand trembled. Then it disappeared without a trace. A cold sword was placed against his neck. Stop! I'll give it to you. Ling Shi hurriedly shouted. Yu Qianqiu cackled and said, even if I kill you, the item will still be mine. Ling Shi bitterly smiled. If you kill me, I guarantee that you won't be able to find it. The item has been hidden by me. Yu Qianqiu frowned and stared at Ling Shi for a while. Suddenly, he withdrew the sword against Ling Shi's neck and said coldly, stop wasting time. Hand over the item, and I won't kill you. Chapter 32. Ling Shi was stunned. He didn't expect his opponent to agree so easily. He asked in astonishment, aren't you afraid that I'll run away? Run. You can try. I can also guarantee that you will suffer a fate worse than death. Yu Qianqiu snorted disdainfully and impatiently said, take out the item. I don't want to repeat myself a third time. Ling Shi sighed. No matter how good the item was, it wasn't as important as his life. After thinking about it, he didn't have the confidence that he could escape. He could only nod silently and step on the collapsed bricks as he walked out. Yu Qianqiu retreated and stared at him coldly. Although he said that he would let his opponent go, he still maintained a certain level of vigilance. He followed Ling Shi to the main hall and looked around. The Taoist temple was simple and didn't have many decorations. In the center, there was a deity worshipped, but he couldn't recognize who it was. A large praying mat below attracted Yu Qianqiu's attention. His eyelids twitched as he thought to himself, could the immortal supporting token be hidden here? While Ling Shi was still sighing, Yu Qianqiu took a few steps forward and grabbed the praying mat. The former's expression instantly changed. Hua! The praying mat was torn apart, and 2 items fell to the ground. The buckwheat husks inside were scattered all over the ground. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Ling Shi and slowly picked up the 2 items. At this moment, Shi Xiaotian also came in. His boss's ferocity just now was deeply engraved in his heart, but he didn't know why his boss would fight with his life on the line. Seeing Yu Qianqiu playing with the 2 items in his hands, and then looking at Ling Shi's reluctant gaze, Shi Xiaotian's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that boss is fighting so hard just to snatch other people's items? Yu Qianqiu carefully examined the items in his hands. The 2 items were a wooden token and a jade plate. The wooden token was simple and unadorned, and its sides were engraved with patterns. On one side, the words supporting immortals were engraved. On the other side, the image of an island was engraved. Releasing his divine sense to investigate, he could feel a roaming wave of true qi. Clearly, it was injected by someone. Needless to say, this was the so-called supporting immortals token. The words 100 Flowers Valley were engraved on the jade archive. There was also a surge of junqi that had been channeled into the jade archive. There was nothing special about the rest of it, and no one knew what it was used for. Yu Qianqiu looked at the spirit stone and asked, what is this thing used for? Spirit Stone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't expect that the thing he had spent so much effort to hide would be found out so quickly. He had thought that no one would notice where he had hidden it. Hearing Yu Qianqiu's question and looking at the thing in his hand, he was slightly taken aback. You don't even know about the 100 Flowers Valley? Is it famous? Holding the jade archive, Yu Qianqiu gave Shi Xiaotian a questioning look. The latter also shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. He couldn't help but ask in a deep voice, am I asking you or are you asking me? Spirit Stone was taken aback. He thought to himself that he had tolerated it. It was his own fault for not being able to defeat Shi Xiaotian. Sighing, he explained, this is the entrance token to the 100 Flowers Valley. The 100 Flowers Valley is a marketplace for cultivators of the Huaxia Empire. As long as you can afford it, you can buy almost anything there. You can also exchange items for items of similar value. Oh, that's a good place. Give me the 100 Flowers token as well. Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. Ah, Spirit Stone exclaimed. What's the use of my 100 flowers token? This thing is just a proof to avoid being interrogated when entering the 100 Flowers Valley in the future. Any cultivator who enters or exits the 100 Flowers Valley, regardless of their level, can register and claim it. It's useless to take someone else's token. I see. Yu Qianqiu nodded and asked, where are the locations of Fuxian Island and the 100 Flowers Valley? You don't even know this? Spirit Stone looked at him, as if he was looking at an idiot. He really wondered if Yu Qianqiu was a cultivator. What? You have a problem with that? Don't you know what it means to be shameless to ask your subordinates? Although Yu Qianqiu said so, he was also lamenting in his heart that he was indeed inexperienced. He was a complete rookie in the cultivation world. Rolling his eyes at Spirit Stone, he thought to himself, this guy is a little useful. Spirit Stone decided not to say it. He thought, whatever you say is right. Why should I ask for a rebuff? Yu Qianqiu rubbed his chin and paced around. He thought for a while and said to Xiaotian, Xiaotian, I'm leaving. Where are you going? The 100 Flowers Valley or Fuxian Island? I'm going too, Xiaotian said. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, there's only one Fuxian token. You go back first. After I find the Foundation Establishment pill, I'll come find you. Don't worry. I won't forget you. Xiaotian was silent. After a long time he nodded and said, I understand. I'll wait for you. Boss, be careful. After that, he walked out of the main hall and called his big brother who was hiding at the side. Spirit Stone saw the boy lying on the ground. He went to check, but there was no breath. Yu Qianqiu kicked him to death. Spirit Stone shook his head and sighed. Is he dead? Yu Qianqiu asked indifferently. Spirit Stone nodded his head heavily. It could be seen that he wasn't very sad. To a cultivator, killing a commoner wasn't a big deal. Yu Qianqiu weighed the 100 flowers token in his hand and handed it over with a smile. He said, I'll return it to you. Lingshi stood up, his gaze lingering on the other immortal supporting medallion. He shook his head helplessly and extended his hand to accept the 100-flower medallion. Suddenly his wrist tightened. The hand that was handing over the medallion had already grabbed his wrist. Lingshi turned pale with fright and shouted angrily, You didn't keep your word. Before he could finish speaking, his vision suddenly blurred, and the scene changed. After pulling Spirit Stone into the golden pearl, Yu Qianqiu laughed and let go of him. Spirit Stone looked around and shouted, Where is this? Let me out. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said, You should feel honored. This is my territory. Ordinary people don't have the fortune to enter. You untrustworthy and despicable person. You promised that as long as I handed over the Fuxian token, you would let me go. Why did you imprison me? Spirit Stone pointed his finger and cursed. No, you're mistaken. Don't you think that I did what I promised you? Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said with a smile. First, I only said that I wouldn't kill you if you handed over the token. I didn't say that I would let you go. That's why you are still alive and well. Second, you didn't hand over the token. I found it myself. If you think about it carefully, you will know that I wasn't talking nonsense. Just based on this, I won't be breaking my promise if I kill you. Sophistry. I will fight you to the death. Spirit Stone Immortal roared and fiercely pounced over, fiercely hacking his palm towards Yu Qianqiu. The latter smiled and disappeared. Spirit Stone missed. A mocking laugh came from behind him. If I want to kill you, it will be as easy as flipping my hand. If you want to kill me, it will be as difficult as ascending to heaven. So, I advise you not to waste your energy. Spirit Stone was so angry that he cried out. He turned and pounced at Yu Qianqiu again. However, no matter what he did, Yu Qianqiu always disappeared with a smile. This went on for a long time. Suddenly Spirit Stone seemed to think of something. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and shouted, Form displacement transposition? Is this the form displacement transposition that only a cultivator at the end of the crossing tribulation stage can use? How is this possible? Could it be that you have been hiding your cultivation? No, this is impossible. Although Spirit Stone said it was impossible, after he calmed down, he felt a little afraid. Regardless of whether this was really form displacement transposition, With Xiao Chen's cultivation, killing him would be as easy as flipping his hand. It turned out that Xiao Chun had been playing with him in the Taoist temple. Thinking of this, Spirit Stone's heart turned cold. Finally, he lowered his hands, no longer thinking of fighting with his life on the line. Of course, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't tell him that he could go wherever he wanted here. He smiled mysteriously and said, knowing that it's impossible, but not doing it. This is what a smart person would do. Spirit Stone Immortal, go over there and see what's over there. After saying that, he pointed at a mountain of cloth bags. Spirit Stone raised his head and looked in the direction he was pointing. He looked at Xiao Chun suspiciously. In the end, he walked to the foot of the mountain. Many of the cloth bags were open, revealing spirit stones. It was as if they were things that no one wanted and were casually thrown there. Could this mountain be made of spirit stones? Spirit Stone Immortal was shocked. He had never seen so many spirit stones before. Yu Qianqiu suddenly appeared beside him and said with a smile, "That's right. These are all spirit stones. They are all mine. Now you should know which one of us is worthy of being called Spirit Stone Immortal." Spirit Stone Immortal was now completely convinced. He couldn't beat Xiao Chun in a fight, but Xiao Chun could use money to crush him. He couldn't help but reveal an embarrassed expression. He said embarrassedly, "My name is Ji Wushuang. After I left supporting Immortal Island, I wandered into Spirit Stone Temple. That's why people respectfully called me Spirit Stone Immortal." There were some things that he didn't say. After he chased away the original owner of Spirit Stone Temple, he became Spirit Stone Immortal. Yu Qianqiu kept staring at Spirit Stone Immortal's expression. He was very satisfied with the current effect. This was the effect he wanted when he brought Spirit Stone Immortal here. Yu Qianqiu had no experience in the cultivation world, so he needed such a person to be his follower. As for Spirit Stone Immortal's trivial matters, he couldn't be bothered. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "What's Spirit Stone Immortal? Chicken is peerless and duck is peerless. It sounds so bad. I'll change your name. I guarantee it will sound better than now." "Change my name?" Spirit Stone Immortal asked in astonishment. "Why? You don't want to?" Yu Qianqiu shouted in a deep voice. Spirit Stone Immortal shook his head silently. He didn't agree, but he also didn't say that he didn't agree. Anyone would feel uncomfortable changing their name again and again. Yu Qianqiu stared at Spirit Stone Immortal's red face and 3 strands of long beard. He blushed and said, "From now on, you will be called Guan Yu." Guan Yu's courtesy name is Yinchang. It means Guan as in gate, Yu, as in feather, Yin as in white cloud, and long as in long. What do you think of this name? Guan Yu courtesy name is Yinchang. Spirit Stone Immortal couldn't figure out why he chose this name. He muttered a few times, but couldn't find anything special about it. He was puzzled and asked, "Why did you choose this name?" Yu Qianqiu chuckled and made a mighty pose of wielding the green dragon crescent blade. He said, "Don't you think this name is very mighty, very bold, and very weighty?" Spirit Stone Immortal shook his head and muttered, "I can't tell. Guan Yu, how weighty can a feather be?" Looks like this guy isn't too satisfied. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and chuckled. He said, "As long as you promise to use this name in the future, I can also guarantee that you will succeed in building your foundation within 10 years. "Really?" Spirit Stone Immortal's eyes lit up. He said happily, "As long as you can really help me succeed in building my foundation within 10 years, I promise that I will never change my name from now on, Guan Yu. If I can't do it, I will naturally change my name back." "Haha, it's a deal. It's a deal." Both of them laughed loudly. Yu Qianqiu happily patted his shoulder and said, "Guan Yu, from now on, you will follow me well. I guarantee that you will eat and drink well every day. Sooner or later, you will cultivate to the tribulation passing stage." Spirit Stone nodded and smiled. He didn't know why this guy was so happy just because he changed his name. Sigh. Sure enough, experts all have some strange hobbies. Yu Qianqiu was very pleased. In his previous life, he had offered countless incense sticks to Second Master Guan and kowtowed countless times. But in the end, he still died. Now he got Guan Yu as his follower. He believed that he would definitely be very impressive when he went out. No. When we go out, I have to order a set of green robes and a green hat for him to wear. Then, I have to carry a long sword on my waist and hold the hilt of the sword in my hand while following behind me. This way, I will look impressive, scary, and awesome when I go out. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.